Hello everyone. Before we begin, let me tell you that the information about the Titans and the Old Gods is a little bit unclear. It sometimes changes depending on your source, but I'll try to tell you the global story. If any of my information is wrong, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments below. Let's begin, shall we? It's uncertain how the Warcraft universe came to be. Some say that it was created by a single entity, while others believe that a catastrophic cosmic explosion sent the infinite worlds spinning out into the vastness of the Great Dark. What is certain is that out of creation, a race of Titans emerged. The Titans, their sole purpose is to bring order to the universe, stability to the various worlds, and ensure a safe future for the beings that will follow in their footsteps. They did this by traveling from planet to planet to shape the worlds. The Titans are led by an elite cult known as the Pantheon. You have Aman'Thul, High Father and leader of the Pantheon, Eonar, matron of all life, Norgannon, Lorekeeper and Master Magician, Golganeth, the son of Aman'Thul and Eonar, Kaskarov, shaper and forger of the world, and Sargeras, the Titans' greatest warrior, defender of their worlds. Sargeras would later on betray the Pantheon and team up with the demons. His replacement is Akramar. So the Titans were on their crusade to bring order to the universe, and after a while the Titans found a little planet now known as Azeroth. And here the story changes depending on your source. There are sources that claim that the Titans themselves created Azeroth, others that say Azeroth was already there. There are sources that say Old Gods infected Azeroth after the Titans' arrival, others say that it was already infected. I'm going to go with the in-game version based on the Old Gods and the Ordering of Azeroth book. This version states that the planet Azeroth was already there before the Titans arrived. The Titans found the world to be infected with Old Gods and the elements were waging war with each other. The elementals were led by elemental lords and their names are Alakir the Wind Lord, Neptulon the Tide Hunter, Ragnaros the Fire Lord and Terrazane the Stone Mother. The Old Gods are pretty much the counterparts of the Titans. Where the Titans want to bring order to the universe, the Old Gods feed on chaos. It's uncertain as to how many Old Gods there are in the universe, but there are sources that claim that the Old Gods did not come from Azeroth, they simply infected it. The Old Gods are also not bound to Azeroth itself, since there have been sightings of Old Gods in Outlands. The Titans and the Old Gods fought with each other, and even though the elemental lords were powerful, even their combined might was no match for the Titans. The Titans defeated the elemental lords and banished them to the abyssal plains, where they will continue to do battle with each other. After that, they battled the Old Gods, and the Old Gods were one by one defeated. However, to their dismay, the Titans found out that killing an Old God would mean the destruction of Azeroth. So instead the Titans imprisoned them within the planet itself. This infection that prevented them from killing the Old Gods would later on be referred to as the Curse of Flesh. During the war between the Old Gods and the Titans, there is one Old God actually killed and one Titan fell. It's uncertain if that means that the Titan was actually killed. Once the elements were banished to their planes, nature became peaceful again, and the Titans began their work of shaping the world. To help them with this project, the Titans created a couple of races. To help them carve out the earth, the Titans created the dwarf-like earthen from magical living stone. To help them dredge out the seas and lift the land from the seafloor, the Titans created the immense but gentle sea giants. For many ages, the Titans moved and shaped the earth, until at last there remained one perfect continent. Shaping and creating Azeroth took many ages, and the Titans discarded anything they didn't like to the now known Emerald Dream. The Emerald Dream is like the blueprint of Azeroth, the way Azeroth would be if no life would have changed the world. For example, in Azeroth there is the city of Stormwind, built by the humans. On the same location in the Emerald Dream you would see a forest. At the continent's center the Titans crafted a lake. The lake, which they named the Well of Eternity, was to be the basis of life for the world. As twilight fell on the final day of their labors, the Titans named the continent Kalimdor, Land of Eternal Starlight. The world was created in the image of the Titans, but they knew that the Old Gods were still buried beneath the earth, so they decided to leave certain defenses and guardians behind in case the Old Gods would ever become a threat again. Best known are probably the 5 dragon aspects, who each were granted a portion of the Titans their power. These were Nosdormu the Timeless One, the massive bronze dragon chosen by Aman'Thul to guard time itself and police the ever-spinning pathways of fate and destiny. Alexstrasza the Lifebinder, the Red Leviathan chosen by Eonar to safeguard all life on the world. Ysera the Dreamer, the Green Dragon and Alexstrasza's younger sister, chosen by Eonar to watch over the growing wilds of the world from her realm, the Emerald Dream. Melagos the Spellweaver, Blue Dragon chosen by Norgannon as the guardian of magic and hidden arcanum. He would later on go mad and be replaced with Kael'thas. And finally, Neltharion the Earthwarder, aka Deathwing. The mighty black dragon chosen by Kaskarov and given dominion over the earth and the deep places of the world. Ironically, this connection to the world of Azeroth would cause Neltharion to go insane and eventually become Deathwing. Besides the aspects, there were also certain titanic structures and creatures like Ulduar and the jailers of Yogg-Saron. However, the Titans still wanted to make sure that the old gods would never become a threat again, so on top of these defenders they also left behind failsafe devices. For example, you had Loke near Ulduar who, upon death, would send a message to Elgalon the Observer. Elgalon would then come down, scan the world, and if it indeed was infected, he would send a message to the Pantheon would destroy Azeroth and rebuild it. Later on in Cataclysm we found another similar device in the Halls of Lightning. Heroes, with the help of Bran Bronzebeard and Harrison Jones, were able to disable the device before Deathwing got his hands on it. If they didn't, it could have been used to destroy entire Azeroth. It makes you wonder though, why not kill all the old gods to begin with? Why let life exist on the planet if you're planning to destroy it anyways? I'll go back to that question in the speculation video. So the Titans left and let life on Azeroth evolve as they made their way to other planets in the universe. What happened next? Well, the funny thing is that if you backtrack nearly every story of Warcraft, you'll eventually find out that either the old gods or the Titans are its source. And with Titans, I also count Sargeras. Sargeras' story is an interesting one and I'll try to give you the short version of it, but it is important to know it. As I said before, he was the champion of the Pantheon, kicking chaos butt and defending the worlds the Titans created. However, at some point in time, before the creation of Azeroth, he fell into madness. He felt despair as he saw how much the universe was fighting against the vision of the Titans, and this despair caused him to free the demons that he first fought against, eventually creating an army called the Burning Legion. He felt that the Titans themselves were responsible of creation's failure, and he set out to undo the work of the Titans. Sargeras and the Legion eventually became aware of the young world of Azeroth due to the Night Elves' reckless use of arcane magic, and Sargeras began to hunger for the limitless energies of the Well of Eternity. He manipulated Queen Azshara into creating a portal that would allow him to enter our world. This would have succeeded was it not for the Night Elves, aided by Cenaria's Woodfolk and Alexstrasza's dragons. They destroyed the Well of Eternity, causing the portal to implode and split the continent of Kalimdor apart, leaving behind the major continents and scattered islands that are known today. Those are Northrend, Khazan, the Eastern Kingdoms, Pandaria, and the remnants still referred to as Kalimdor. It is rumored that Queen Azshara made a pact with an old god as they fell into the sea. This pact would forever change her highborn into the Naga that we know today. The site of the Well of Eternity became a swirling vortex of power known as the Maelstrom, storm of chaotic energies, which continues to rage to this very day. The entire war would later be known as the War of the Ancients, but it wouldn't be the last time that Sargeras tried to conquer our planet. The second time he tried to do it by infecting the Guardian Aegwynn, waiting inside of her and eventually possessing her son Medivh. This caused the events of the Dark Portal and the first war between orcs and humans. However, Sargeras was discovered by Medivh's apprentice and they killed Medivh before Sargeras' plan succeeded. It's said that Sargeras is still out there waiting to make his return. To this date, it's still unclear how many worlds the Burning Legion has consumed. All the more impressive that our little planet Azeroth has been able to stand up against him. So a quick recap, Titans came, saw Azeroth, created in their image, left the Well of Eternity behind, and let life do its thing. After that, the Well of Eternity exploded, splitting the continent of Kalimdor into different pieces. Sargeras became evil, tried to take over our world, and we stopped him to do so. Next time we take a look at what we exactly know about the Old Gods. The Old Gods are not native to Azeroth, they simply infected it. They're also not bound to Azeroth itself, since an Old God has been seen in Outland. It's uncertain where exactly the Old Gods came from, but what we do know is that they were fighting with each other. In this war they used the Elemental Lords and they pitched the elements against each other. That is of course until the Titans came and imprisoned them beneath the earth. Depending on the source, 3, 4 or 5 Old Gods lie imprisoned beneath Azeroth. I'll once again go with the Old Gods and the Ordering of Azeroth book, which states that the Titans imprisoned 5 evil gods far beneath the surface of the world. The Old Gods are the counterparts of the Titans, where the Titans want order, the Old Gods want chaos. The Old Gods used the Curse of Flesh to weaken the seed races. This weakness would make them easier to manipulate and would cause some of the early races to evolve into the species that we know today. The seed races are the original races created by the Titans, and for example you have the Urvan that evolved into the dwarves or the Vrykul into the humans. The first Old God that we discovered in Classic was named C'Thun. Now either it's C'Thun or C.T. Hun, I just say C'Thun. The prophecy of C'Thun claims that a battle between a Titan and C'Thun raged in Silithus. A Titan fell, but may not have died, and an Old God had also fallen. However, the Old God did survive, and he survived unnoticed by the Titans. For millennia he lay dormant beneath the world, biding its time. From its prison, it waited for the exact moment at which to strike back at those that would see it harmed. Over time, the Well of Eternity would give life to the creatures known as the Silphid. K'Fun used the Silphid to create avatars of his image, later known as Kirai. The Kirai would name the old god K'Fun, and K'Fun was born. The great fortress city of Ankirai was created to house their growing armies and prepare for the coming of K'Fun. His children had spent thousands of years building an army capable of exacting revenge upon the whole of Kalimdor, and there were no Titans around to stop them this time. Only the Night Elves that once inhabited this area were there to defend. They call this the War of the Shifting Sands. The Night Elves held their ground, led by a Night Elf known as Stakhelm. Eventually the twin emperors of Ankirai would capture the son of Stakhelm and brutally execute him in front of the Night Elf forces. The war continued, but the will of the great leader was sapped. The whole of Silphus was soon engulfed by the Silphids, and the Night Elves retreated to Unguro Crater. Something in Unguro Crater prevented the Kirai from being able to take the land. They referred to it as Godlands, but it's uncertain what exactly stopped them. What we do know is that this gave the Night Elves enough time to ask the Bronze Dragonflight for help. At first they refused, but after the Caverns of Time were attacked, the Bronze Dragonflight joined the battle. Even the combined strength of the Dragonflight and the Night Elves wasn't enough to win the battle, so the Bronze asked the help of Red, Blue and Green. All of them together managed to push the Kirai back into the ruins and raise a wall that would hold them imprisoned, until the day would come that someone would reforge the scepter of the Shifting Sands and hit the gong. And hit the gong we did. On January 23rd, 2006, the gates of Ankirai were opened for the first time and the path to K'Fun lay before us. Adventurers bravely fought an old god for the very first time, and like the Titans, they thought it was defeated. As it turns out, we merely defeated the manifestation of K'Fun. His will, his essence, is still alive, and while the Lich King attacked Stormwind City in Ogrimmar, Cho'Gall began the resurrection of his new master, the old god K'Fun. This deformed the ogre's body, which became monstrous and with similar features to his master. Eventually Cho'Gall would fail to resurrect his master, but the threat of K'Fun is ever present.
Death is close.
The second major manifestation that we've seen of an old god was Yogg-Saron. Yogg-Saron was imprisoned by the Titans inside Ulduar, and to guard him they left behind the Titanic Watchers known as Loken, Thorim, Hodir, Tyr, Mimiron and Freya. Yogg-Saron wanted what every old god wants, and that is to be free again, so he corrupted his jailers, started with Loken. Loken was the chief jailer or prime designate. After his corruption, Loken subdued the other Watchers and made it possible for Yogg-Saron to escape. Loken was leading the Aesir, Storm Giants and Vanir, Earth Giants, but would eventually turn those against each other in order of Yogg-Saron. This war between the giants would give Loken a reason for neutralizing them, and he would place the Urvan, Giants and Vrykul into stasis at locations like Ulduar and Uldaman. He also killed Sif, the wife of his brother Thorim, and blamed the Frost Giants. This turned Thorim against his former allies and would later cause him to give in to despair. All in all, Loken became as corrupted as could be, and like I said, this allowed Yogg-Saron to escape his bindings.
How could we have missed this until now? King Varian, thank you for coming on such short notice.
What's this all about, Ronan?
I've called you here to ask for your help. While our efforts against the Lich King press on, Bran here has brought us frightening news of the horrors beneath Ulduar and of its dark prisoner.
Prisoner? Huh. With its binding shattered, its influence unchecked, it's gonna come after us, and we're gonna be the prisoners.
You can see now what we're up against. If this evil is not stopped, then the armies of the Death God will march on our doorstep.
You'll have to excuse me.
Well, what do you propose we do?
Thrall, what are you doing here so soon?
The summons sounded dire, Jaina. What's happened?
Bran Bronzebeard's forces assaulted the gates of Ulduar. They battled the Iron Lords and their cursed minions.
Evasive action! Evasive action!
He won't stop talking about this presence he felt, permeating the great halls, stirring in their minds, chilling their blood. He said, the horror that the Titans imprisoned so long ago, Yogg-Saron has awakened.
Bran Bronzebeard would explore Ulduar in Wrath of the Lich King in search of hidden Titan knowledge or treasure. What he found was not what he expected, and he quickly made his way to the Kirin Tor, asking them for aid in breaching Ulduar and placing Yogg-Saron back in his confinements. The heroes of the Horde and the Alliance answered the call, and they made their way through Ulduar, freeing the Guardians Thorim, Hodir, Mimiron and Freya from their corruption. Those that are still paying attention might have noticed that there is one Watcher missing, namely Tyr. It's unknown where Tyr currently is. All we know is that he wasn't in Ulduar when we arrived, and that he left his Watcher's tower without a struggle. Who knows, we might see him again in the future. The heroes made their way to the chamber of Yogg-Saron, and with the help of the Guardians managed to subdue him. What's interesting to note is that during the Yogg-Saron encounter, players were able to witness 3 events from the history of Warcraft. You had the creating of the Dragon Soul,
It is a weapon like no other. It must be like no other.
His brood learned their lesson before too long. You will soon learn yours.
the assassination of King Lei-Shen by Corona half-Orcan,
The clans are united under Black Hand in this assault. They will stand together until Stormwind has fallen. Gul'dan is bringing up his warlocks by nightfall. Until then, the Blackrock clan will be trying to take the eastern wall.
1,000 deaths.
We will hold until the reinforcements come. As long as men with stout hearts are manning the walls and the throne, Stormwind will hold.
Tremble, mortals, before the coming of the end.
The Orc leaders agree with your assessment.
Your petty quarrels only make me stronger.
and a vision where you could see the Lich King torturing Bolvar 4 Dragon.
I am not afraid of you!
I will break you as I broke him. You will learn. No king rules forever. Only death is eternal.
It's speculated that Yogg-Saron has influenced these 3 specific events, however this is purely speculation. The manifestation of Yogg-Saron was defeated, and the brave heroes focused their attention against the Lich King. Time passed until the Cataclysm shattered the world.
Your fate is sealed. The end of days is finally upon you, and all who inhabit this miserable little seedling. Ului Bisarak, Gagerong, Wish. The world heaves with my torment. Its wretched kingdoms quake beneath my rage. But at last, the whole of Azeroth will break. And all will burn beneath the shadow of my wings.
In Cataclysm we don't face the Old God directly, but we are told who is controlling Deathwing, namely the Old God Enzoth. It were the whispers of Enzoth who drove Deathwing into madness, and it's rumored that Enzoth is the source of corruption from the Emerald Nightmare. The goal of Deathwing is to fulfill an ancient prophecy called the Hour of Twilight, where all the defenses fail and the Old Gods are free to roam the world once again. As most of you will remember, we defeated Deathwing with the help of the Dragon Aspects and Thrall. In the end cinematic we are told that the Dragon Aspects have fulfilled their purpose and that their ancient powers are expanded.
But now, we must see it. with mortal eyes. We dragon aspects have fulfilled our great purpose, and our ancient power is expended.
And this is the main reason why I hated Cataclysm so much. I won't complain about how they're going to return the Dragon Soul when they don't have control over time anymore. That's time travel, you know, you can give a spin to that. What I can't understand is that Alexstrasza says that they fulfilled their destiny. So bear with me, right? Their destiny was apparently to stop the Hour of Twilight. The one causing the Hour of Twilight is Deathwing, in order of the Old Gods. Deathwing became the puppet of the Old Gods because he received the powers from the Titans. This gave him a connection to the Earth, driving him insane by the whispers of the Old Gods, yeah? So he received these powers to apparently stop the Hour of Twilight, which he would cause because of those powers. So if you take away giving the powers bit, there would be no Deathwing, there would be no Hour of Twilight, and the whole reason of giving their powers would fall away. This just doesn't make sense to me. And did everyone just forget about the old god Enzov, who actually put this all in motion? Wouldn't it be handy to have dragon aspects to clean up this mess? And what about the unnamed old god that we still don't know about?
You are Azeroth's true guardians, and the future of this world is in your hands. For the dawning of the Age of Mortals has begun.
Besides that bit, Alexstrasza says that it's the Age of Mortals. And what do we mortals do? Balm Faramore and invade Pandaria. Very good call, Alexstrasza. Well done. With that little rant said, it's time to take a look at the next named old god in Pandaria. I'm going to tell you a couple of the theories that people have come up with and see what the future might bring. The story begins at the very beginning, where the Titans arrived on Azeroth and fought with the old gods.
Before your history began, our empire was vast. We shared this world with our sister kingdoms, Ankiraj and Ajol Nerub. Our gods were many and powerful. We men did worship the 7 heads of Yasharaj. Great was the Old One, and terrible was his wrath. He consumed hope and begat despair. He inhaled courage and breathed fear. When the usurpers came, the ones you call Titans, Yasharaj was destroyed. His last terrible breath has haunted this land ever since, but the shadows he left behind are mere whispers of his former glory.
He infected the land of Pandaria with the Shah, and the Titans found out that killing an old god would eventually destroy the world. Imprisoning a complete old god would be wiser than to strike it down and let it multiply. This all happened before the Sundering, so Kalimdor was still a complete continent. Revyon tells us what happens next.
According to this runestone, the Mogu were Titan constructs, soulless creatures built of stone. The Mogu served a Titan keeper. His name was Ra. In the Mogu tongue, Ra-Den means Master Ra. The Mogu and their master were sent to Pandaria. They were pursuing a great darkness. Here there is a mention of an old god, Yasharaj, a beast with 7 heads who breathed darkness. I suspect that thing was the source of the Shah that haunts Pandaria to this day. This runestone speaks of a cradle of life, a place where the Titans could create new creatures. Oh, of course, the Veil of Eternal Blossoms. It was a living laboratory, much like Ungoro Crater or Sholazar Basin. The Mogu were created and sent here to guard the Veil for their Titan masters. Guard it from what? Were the old gods still a threat? Here, this fragment speaks of the winged legions of Yasharaj. Servants of an old god? Could this mean the Mantid?
The Mogu and Ra-Den were sent to Pandaria by the Titans with a mission, but it's unclear what exactly that mission was. Here's what Lorewalker Cho has to say about it.
Parents place their children on a path, but they do not always know where the road will take them. The Mogu were children as well, children of the Titans. They were once a legion of stone, heartless and obedient. By the Titans' command, they fought the terrible servants of the old gods. They shaped the mountains and carved the rivers of the land. And they created a magical cradle of life in a hidden valley that we now call the Veil of Eternal Blossoms. But eventually, the Titans fell silent, and their creations were cursed with flesh. The Mogu grew restless. Many generations later, when the Thunder King united them, they seized upon their legacy. I truly believe now that the Mogu thought they were doing the work of the Titans. They fought against the Mantid and used the powers of the Veil to create new life.
Okay, so the Mogu had a mission, but for some reason the Titans fell silent and the Mogu fell prey to the curse of flesh. The Mogu received their orders from Ra-den, but...
Something about the sleeping keeper. I think it's referring to Ra-den, but why was he asleep? You found another piece of the puzzle. This was carved by the Mogu. They were frustrated 1,000 years with no orders from their master, and their bodies had turned to flesh. The Mogu began to argue amongst themselves. This runestone speaks of Mogu savagery. They fell apart into warrior clans, but one king was more ambitious than the others. Lei-Shen, the Thunder King. When the Titan Keeper fell silent, Lei-Shen decided to speak for him. The final piece of the puzzle. The Thunder King took on the powers of Ra-den, the very essence of a Titan. He united the Mogu into an empire and tried to continue the Titan's work. Of course he saw himself as a god.
It's unknown why exactly Ra-den fell silent, but what we do know is that he will be the heroic only boss in the upcoming Throne of Thunder raid. The Dungeon Journal says, legend has it that Lei-Shen found an ancient Titan Keeper guarding a miraculous device known as the Engine of Nalashka. No one knows what transpired between the two beings, but Lei-Shen later emerged from the site, bristling with the power to forge an empire. I personally think Lei-Shen overpowered Ra-den for some reason, took his powers and imprisoned Ra-den within the Throne of Thunder. When you defeat Ra-den, he says,
Wait! I am not your enemy. You are powerful, more powerful than he was even. Perhaps you are right.
Either way, Lei-Shen came back with the power of a Titan Keeper and he set out to finish the Titan's work. They enslaved Pandaria, allied with Zandalari, and they built the Serpent's Wall to keep the Mantid away from the rest of Pandaria, since Lei-Shen knew that the Mantid would never follow his ruling. The Mogu also created Divine Bell, which was a bell cast from the Maker's flesh, shaped by Star's fire and bound by the breath of Darkest Shadow. This bell, when rung, could shake the world and call to the heavens. Taken to war, the bell's tones steered the hearts of Lei-Shen's warriors. It fueled their hatred and anger, lending them strength on the field of battle. The bell's screaming voice struck fear and doubt into the hearts of the Emperor's enemies, sending them fleeing in his path. This bell basically tapped into the powers of the Sha that lay dormant in the soil of Pandaria. What struck me as interesting was that it says cast from the Maker's flesh. The makers of the Mogu are the Titans, so is there a Titan in Pandaria, or does it mean made from the flesh of Ra-den? Lei-Shen would eventually die. It's uncertain why he died, but he did bestow the Zandalari with the power and knowledge of resurrecting him.
Under Kun-Lai thunder sleeps. The storm long spent their rests. But blood of brother kingdom keeps alive the dispossessed. By Zandalari blood he will be taken. To Zandalari voice he will awaken.
Emperors came and went, and the Pandaren would eventually rise up and overthrow the Mogu. Time passed until the day Cho'Gall was crowned Emperor of Pandaria. He followed the tradition of all the emperors before him and sought the counsel of the great water speaker of the Jinyu. This water speaker foresaw the events at the Well of Eternity and the sundering that would split the continent of Kalimdor apart. Emperor Cho'Gall was terrified by this vision, and he spoke with the Jade Serpent, the Spirit of Wisdom. The Jade Serpent urged Cho'Gall to divest himself of his burdens, to purify his spirit, and to become one with the land. Cho'Gall asked his companion the Monkey King to help him with this task, and for 3 days and 3 nights he meditated as to how he could purge himself of all doubt. The Monkey King became weary of waiting, and he made a mask of doubt for the Emperor. He urged the Emperor to place the mask of doubt on his face. The mask worked. As Cho'Gall pulled the mask away, his doubt took on a physical form, and this is what I believe to be the rebirth of the Sha. So far in the history of Pandaria, there's no mention of any physical manifestation of the Sha, only the Mogu who tapped into the power of them. That means that with the actions of the Emperor he fed the Shah's emotions, and this gave them the strength to manifest into actual beings. The Emperor repeated this progress until he cast away his 6 burdens. Eventually he would tell his people to live each day to its fullest and sleep each night with the peace of a mind unburdened. And he told the Shadowpen to restrain and control the Shah, which his actions placed upon Pandaria. He would continue his journey to the Terrace of Eternal Spring, there to separate Pandaria from the rest of the world. But try as he might, he was unable. The ground trembled but did not move. Soon he began to doubt, and the Shah of Doubt began to emerge from the east. He began to fear, and the Shah of Fear began ripping out of his shackles to the west. Desperate, he called out the Jade Serpent for help. Pandaria is more than just the Pandaren Empire, she told Cho'Gall. Your enemies to the west are as much as part of the land as your empire behind the wall. Seeing that all things were connected in an eternal whole, and that this beloved land was more than just the Pandaren Empire, Cho'Gall at last understood. His staff clattered to the floor as his spirit became one with the land. When the world tore itself apart, Pandaria drifted quietly into the ocean. And as the Emperor's robes fluttered empty to the ground, the land became enveloped in impenetrable mists, hidden away from the rest of the world. The Pandaren would from that moment on live in relative peace and harmony. There was the occasional Mantid invasion, but the Shah infestation was under control. That is, until the mist parted and we set foot on land. Us setting foot in Pandaria fed the Shah with every single emotion, allowing them to escape their bindings and even control the Mantid Queen and the leader of the Shadowpen. This gave the scattered Mogul clans the opportunity of retaking some of their facilities and, with the help of the Zandalari, resurrect Lei-Shen, the Thunder King. And here the story reaches present day. There's a lot of speculation about a possible 7th Shah, and this speculation is there because Yasharaj had 7 heads and Cho'Gall had 7 burdens. There was an interview where they said that 7 was just an easy number to use and that we won't see a 7th Shah. It seems logical, since Cho'Gall's last burden was not an emotion, it was merely a realization that your negative emotions are as much part of you as the positive ones. So what's next? Now we get to the part of speculation and wild guesses. Don't take this as anything set in stone, it's just fun to speculate. When you defeat Raden, he will tell you the following.
Wait! I am not your enemy. You are powerful, more powerful than he was even. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps there is still hope. But there is a yawning chasm of darkness beneath you mortals, vast, endless, and all-consuming. I do not believe that you can correct this doomed course, but you have earned the right to try.
It seems like Raden is giving us a warning about darkness beneath us, which is a clear reference to the old gods. It's possible that he knows nothing about what we have done in the past, or maybe he knows more than we do. Could this also be the reason why he was underground for so long, why he fell asleep? Was he looking for a way of defeating the old gods, or did he just fall into despair? As we follow Refion's questline, we eventually take the heart of the Thunder King and give it to Refion. Upon touching it, he receives a vision.
The powers of a god. It is filled with Titan magic, the very language of creation. Oh, I see them. A million worlds, glittering in their perfection. But one above all others.
Oh, we have fallen. We must rebuild the final Titan. Do not forget.
It is gone. I don't remember any of it. Oh, none of them remember. The irony.
This can mean so many things. Let's see what we can make out of this. We have fallen could mean that the Pantheon has fallen, or it's an old message where the Mogul fell to the curse of flesh. We must rebuild the final Titan indicates that there are no new Titans and that you can rebuild them somehow. Remember the prophecy of K'Thun where one old god died and one fell? Also the Divine Bell was created from the Maker's flesh. Did they use the flesh of a fallen Titan? Is there a fallen Titan somewhere under Pandaria? And for some reason the Mogul collectively forgot about all of this. Was that because of the curse of flesh? Who knows, but it's one hell of a cliffhanger and it leaves us with Refion controlling the power to create worlds. I doubt that anything good will come from this. So we have 5 old gods chained beneath the earth and 1 killed. Y'Shaarj was apparently the old god that they killed, and so far we've defeated K'Fun, Yogg-Saron and indirectly Enzoth. That means that there are 1 or 2 old gods to be found if you don't count Y'Shaarj as being imprisoned. I'll post a couple of articles in the description if you want to read some speculation, but honestly the only one that knows is Chris Metzen, and he's not telling. Even if they announce the new names, the lores can always be changed to host more old gods or to change it, so really you can speculate all you want, you won't find a clear answer until they've announced it. I want to end this video with answering the question from my first one. It makes you wonder though, why not kill all the old gods to begin with? Why let life exist on the planet if you're planning to destroy it anyways? There are several theories on this one. One is that Azeroth is actually a Titan egg, which holds a new Titan. Another is that Azeroth was actually created around the old gods to be a prison for them. Both could be true, especially with the new information from Raytheon, but my personal favorite is this one. Imagine for a moment that you are the Titans. Your brother Sargeras, the noblest of all, comes to you in despair. He has doubts about your crusade of bringing order to the universe, and even though you try, you can't reason with him. At that moment it hits you. The race of Titans, believed to be indestructible, can fall to the darkness of the universe. You realize that it will take more than just the titanic races to defeat the darkness. With your powers over time, you receive a vision of a planet still infant, corrupted but with potential. A vision where heroes will be born in the fire of battle. They will struggle, they will fight. Some will fall to darkness, some will embrace the light. Even the one you used to call brother will try to take away their lives, but they will hold their ground and grow stronger. They will fight amongst each other. They will find new allies from planets far away. They will set aside their differences simply to keep the darkness at bay. Until the day comes where they are ready to stand at your side, to fight not just for their own survival, but for the fate of the universe. And as soon as Anduin came into view, the world changed. Instead of the prince, an armored warrior stood before him, his plate helm and breastplate shining with the essence of the light itself. The warrior wielded a sword forged from the same material as the armor, held it aloft as he perched on an outcropping. Whether it was on another world or Azeroth, Velen couldn't quite tell. And suddenly, the dark sky above erupted with the combined chivalry of Azeroth races. The Blood Elves, Orcs, Trolls, Taurens, and even the accursed undead and scheming goblins rode flying mounts of every sort and description. They were armored and armed in magical weaponry, glowing with so much power it hurt Velen's eyes to look at them. Beside the legions of the Horde, the ancient Night Elves charged with humans, dwarves and gnomes, whose ancestors formed the original alliance, and the shape-changing Worgen were united within them. Velen's own Draenei bolstered the army, their ranks abandoned in otherworldly metals and bearing crystalline maces and swords. The Alliance and Hordes were not alone. Dragons swooped and soared in formations that made the sky resemble a giant, multicolored reptilian wing. They blanketed the horizon with their physical size and numbers, and when they roared a challenge, it shook not just the earth Velen stood on, but the universe as well. And yet for all this, the greatest shock to Velen's senses came as he saw those that flew just beyond the army of the dragons. The Naaru had taken the field, so many that Velen didn't understand how creation could contain them. The power of these beings of light filled Velen's heart with hope, swept away the lonely centuries, and left him in wonder that he could ever despair, that the dark, no matter how terrible, could ever truly reign. And then a shadow fell. It was vast and empty, and swallowed all light that entered it. Velen knew it would be all-consuming, until at last it would turn and devour itself, endlessly gnawing on nothing in the great dark beyond, removing all meaning from the universe, from the most heartbreaking sonata to the most arresting sunset. It was too terrible to see, to comprehend, and yet the army headed straight for it, and the light began to fade. It's just a theory. Even if it doesn't come to such an epic conclusion, I'll just be happy if they give Mist of Pandaria a proper ending. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and thank you for all your comments. Now, I tried to tell most of the story about the Titans and Old Gods, but it's so vast, I simply couldn't get all the information in. But eventually, once we get through all the stories of Warcraft, you will see either it's Titan or Old God at the source, so we eventually will get there. Not much is known about Kael'thas' youth. Jaina says that he once was a student at Dalaran, and he was the son of Anastarian Sunstrider, the king of the High Elves. In the past, the High Elves, they used to be high-born Night Elves who fought in the war against the Burning Legion. This war took place around 10,000 years ago, in which Queen Azora, she tried to summon Sargeras and the Legion into the worlds. Some of the Highborn did not agree with their queen's choices. They deflected from her and they joined the Night Elf resistance. Eventually, at the end of the war, Azora and the Legion were defeated, and some of the Highborn that stayed at their queen's side, they were turned into the Naga as the world of Kalimdor sundered apart. The Highborn that joined the Night Elves, they were led by Davramar Sunstrider, and they would eventually be exiled by the rest of the Night Elves. The Night Elves had made the use of arcane magic punishable by death, considering that they didn't want another Legion invasion, they didn't want to draw the attention, so they made the use of arcane magic punishable. Illidan's Stormrage had turned a big fountain of water that was so critical at this time. He had used a vial from the Well of Eternity, several vials even. He had created a new Well of Eternity, and for these actions they imprisoned him because Malfurion, he convinced all the other Night Elves to not execute his brother, so instead they imprisoned him for life. Now the rest of the Highborn, they were unable and unwilling to give up the birthright of the use of arcane magic. Instead of killing all of them, the Night Elves decided to exile the Highborn, but before the Highborn left, they took with them one of Illidan's vials. This vial was filled with water from the original Well of Eternity. They took it with them, and during their travels, the Highborn, they would eventually change, not only in appearance, but they also changed in behavior, and eventually they would call themselves High Elves. They built their kingdom of Kael'thas. They used the vial of water to create their Sunwell, and with the use of magic, they created their own beautiful kingdom. A kingdom that would last for millennia, was able to hold out against the trolls, became allies with the humans, and eventually the High Elves, they would be ruled by Davramar's great-grandson and Kael'thas' father, namely Anastarian Sunstrider. Like I said, there isn't much known about Kael'thas' youth, so I wanted to take the opportunity to explain a little bit about the history of the High Elves, because it's very important for the rest of Kael'thas' story. The first time that we see Kael'thas pop up in the story is when Khadgar informs the Council of Six about the events that took place during his time as apprentice to the Guardian Medivh. Medivh, under the influence of Sargeras, he had opened the Dark Portal and initiated the first Orcish Horde invasion. Khadgar eventually figured out that it was his mentor who had led the orcs into Azeroth, and together with Corona and Winlofar, they managed to take out the corrupted Guardian and stop Sargeras his plans. This did not prevent the orcs from invading their world though. Events were already set in motion, and Stormwind's king was assassinated and the city of Stormwind fell. Those that were able, they fled the city. They set sail to the lands of Lordaeron to warn them about the threat of the Horde and get an army ready. As Khadgar was summoned before the council, he was getting ready to make his report, but as was procedure with the Council of Six, the council had cloaked themselves to keep their true identity a secret. Khadgar at this point had been through far too much. He'd stayed up far too late talking tactics with Lofar, so he didn't want to play such games. He asked them all to remove their cloaks so they could talk face to face, and although some were shocked by this request, Kael'thas Sunstrider, he simply chuckled and was the first to remove his disguise. Now for those unaware, the Council of Six is the name given to the Kirin Tor High Council of Dalaran. These 6 leaders, they're the leaders of both the city and all the territories under the control of Dalaran. And besides Kael'thas Sunstrider at the time, you also had Antonidas, Kel'Thuzad, Kresis, Modera, and I assume Ansarum Runeweaver, although the book simply describes him as a pudgy man, which Khadgar didn't recognize. But if I looked at the list of possible members, he's most likely the one. Khadgar made his report to the council. He explained about Medivh, he explained about the orcs, Corona, the fall of Stormwind. All that information was given to them, and the council decided that the best course of action was to make the destruction of the Dark Portal their #1 priority. Throughout the rest of the war against the Horde, the Kirin Tor did offer their aid with their magi, and it was Khadgar who shut down the portal after the first Horde was defeated. He was unable to completely destroy the connection between Draenor and Azeroth though. That connection would remain, and the Horde would eventually return for their second invasion. This time, the Horde didn't come to conquer the planet. That plan already failed, they had new ambitions. This time, all they wanted to do was collect 3 artifacts, namely the Book of Medivh, the Scepter of Sargeras, and the Eye of Dalaran. The final artifact, as the name suggests, the Eye of Dalaran, it was kept at Dalaran under magical protection. As the Death Knight Terangor and his troops broke in, alarms were raised, and as Kael'thas joined the fight, he saw his close friend Sephara die in battle. In retaliation, Kael'thas raised both hands and drew them apart. Across the room, one of the Death Knights jerked and then shrieked as his body was literally torn limb from limb. Antonidas warned Kael'thas that the Death Knights had to be stopped from teleporting, so the prince did his best to stop them. He tried to weave a spell, but they managed to escape moments before he was finished. The Death Knights didn't teleport far away though, and with a spell of their own, they were able to follow their teleportation. Up on the balcony, this time they managed to cast their spells. They managed to prevent the Death Knights from teleporting further away, but unfortunately, that was not enough. The Horde had the Black Dragon Deathwing working with them, and he appeared alongside the balcony and carried them away. At this point, the risk of shooting spells and angering the mighty Black Dragon, it was simply too great. The Deathwing could turn around, incinerate their city, so Kael'thas and the others, they let them go. Thankfully, the Alliance of Lordaeron, amongst them Khadgar himself, they were able to figure out the Horde's plans, and they stepped through the Dark Portal to stop them. Kael'thas stayed behind and resumed his duties as member of the Council of Six, while his attention was drawn to completely different matters. A young girl named Jaina Proudmoore, she'd moved to Dalaran to study the arts of magic as an apprentice of Antonidas. Kael'thas was very interested in a young mage, and he openly courted her. He'd even invited her to come and visit him in Kael'thas, a land where magic was part of the culture, not just part of a city, not just confined to a handful of elite educated magi. Magic is the birthright of every citizen who would embrace the sun well, and Jaina, she was more than welcome to come and experience it. Unfortunately for the High Elf Prince, Jaina had already set her eyes on another prince, and she also found Kael'thas to be more intimidating than someone she could actually fall for. She felt no such intimidation with Prince Arthas Menethil, and the human prince felt the same for her. One day after the snowball fight, they ended up in each other's arms and they kissed for the first time. From that moment on, they would steal moments here and there to sneak a kiss, to sneak a hug. Since openly loving each other, it would just feed the rumor mill, and both of them had silently decided to not let these rumors grow. As Jaina came back from practicing her fire spells one day, Arthas was waiting for her, and he dragged her into the shadows for a loving embrace. What they didn't know was that right behind her, Kael'thas had followed Jaina to bring back the tome that she had dropped, and as he caught them in their act, he was furious. Anger and outrage fairly crackled around the mage. He was powerful, and Arthas knew that if it came to it, he wouldn't stand a chance. Kael'thas kept his composure though, and with clenched fist he hissed, "Ashamed of her, are you, Arthas? Is she only worth your time and attention if no one knows about her?" Arthas' eyes narrowed. "I had fought to avoid the ravagers of the rumor mill," he said quietly. "You know how these things work, Kil, don't you? Someone says something, and next thing you know, it's believed to be true. I would protect her reputation by..." "Protect?" Kael'thas barked the words. "If you cared about her, you would court her openly, proudly. Any man would." He looked at Jaina, and the anger was gone, replaced by a fleeting expression of pain. Then that too disappeared, and Jaina looked down. "I will leave you two to your tryst, and do not fear, I will say nothing." Kael'thas kept his word, and he said nothing, and the love between Jaina and Arthas grew stronger, until the point came that Arthas got cold feet. He wasn't ready for the responsibilities of it all, he wasn't ready for children, the weight of the crown, all of that, and he decided to end their relationship. Losing Jaina would only be the first thing that Kael'thas would lose to Arthas, since this brings us to the events of Warcraft 3. A plague was spreading across the lands of Lordaeron, and Prince Arthas, together with Jaina, were sent to investigate. They found out that the plague was being spread through the grain used to feed the people, and the man behind it all was none other than Kel'Thuzad, former member of the Council of Six, but exiled from Dalaran and even Lordaeron because of his dark studies into necromancy. Kael'thas had been there that day when Antonidas informed Kel'Thuzad about what they knew about his studies, but Kel'Thuzad didn't care. At this point, he was listening to the whispers of Ner'zhul, of the Lich King himself, sent by Kil'jaeden to weaken the world of Azeroth and get it ready for another invasion from the Burning Legion. Eventually Arthas and his troops, they managed to take out Kel'Thuzad. He decided to purge Drefholm since the grain had already been given out to the people, and there Mal'Ganis taunted the prince to follow him to Northrend and deal with him there. Arthas did just that. He went to Northrend, he picked up the Cursed Blade of Frostmourne, gave up a piece of his soul, and he got his revenge. After spending time in the cold heart of Northrend, listening to the whispers of Ner'zhul. He was now an agent of the Lich King, and as he returned home, he murdered his own father, and he slaughtered the people of his kingdom. This was just the first step in the plan though. Next, they would have to summon Archimonde into the world, and Kel'Thuzad was the man for the job. This did require to collect Kel'Thuzad's decomposed remains. They had to carry these remains in the urn that contained Arthas' father's ashes, and they had to travel to the high elven kingdom of Kael'thas. Only the powers of the Sunwell would be strong enough to bring back the necromancer.
Ah, the wondrous, eternal Kael'thas. I haven't been here since I was a boy.
Be wary. The elves likely wait in ambush.
The frail elves do not concern me, necromancer. Our forces are strengthened with every foe we slay.
Don't be too overconfident, Death Knight. The elves must not be taken lightly.
We shall see. Bring forth the prisoner. Where is the entrance to your land, elf?
You will never enter Kael'thas, Fallen Prince. The woods themselves protect our borders, and the enchanted elf gates protect our capital.
Your precious gates will not stop me any more than these trees, little elf. Bring up the meat wagons. We'll make our own entrance.
Kael'thas wasn't home when the undead marched into his lands, marched upon his city and his people. But Kael'thas was not without its own defenses. The city had been able to hold out against the trolls, they were able to hold out against the dragons under the control of the orcs, so their magical protection was strong, yet it wasn't enough. A trader from within, Darkan Drafir, informed Arthas about how to disable the magical protection. 3 magical stones Arthas had to collect, and these stones, the location where they were hidden, they were kept a secret of course, and only those on the inside knew about them. Yet Arthas was informed, and the defenses quickly fell. People like Sylvanas Windrunner tried to stand up against the fallen prince. Lei-Shen, all of their people, they put up a fierce fight, but death itself had come to their home, and it was not about to stop. At Quel'Danas, King Anastarian Sunstrider rode out to meet Arthas and Frostmourne head-on. The king was a powerful sorcerer, but 3 millennia rested upon his shoulders. Despite that, despite the obvious disadvantage, he still met Arthas and he fought with the ancient weapon known as Fellow Malorn, also known as Flamestrike. Sylvanas is a banshee. She was forced to witness the battle, and she knew that the ancient elven weapon was no match for Frostmourne. It snapped as the blades clashed, the severed pieces whirling away, and Anastarian fell, his soul ripped from him and consumed by the glowing Frostmourne. Arthas' mission was successful, and the powers of the Sunwell were claimed.
Citizens of Silvermoon, I have given you ample opportunities to surrender, but you have stubbornly refused. Know that today, your entire race and your ancient heritage will end. Death itself has come to claim the high home of the elves. Now arise, Kael'thas, and serve the Lich King once again.
I am reborn as promised. The Lich King has granted me eternal life.
News of the destruction quickly reached Kael'thas in Dalaran. Jaina tried to talk to him, speak words of compassion and comfort, but Kael'thas was furious. He was barely restraining himself from physically harming her, and he accused her of letting this butcher sleep in her bed and choosing Arthas over him. Jaina understood that he was attacking her since his real enemy wasn't there, yet she could do nothing to comfort him. I could have stopped him. I should have. He straightened, and coldness suddenly chased away the fire in him. He bowed low, exaggeratedly. I will be departing Dalaran as soon as possible. There is nothing for me here. Jaina winced at the emptiness, the resignation in his voice. I was a fool of the greatest order to ever think any of you humans could aid me. I will leave this place of doddering old magi and ambitious young ones. None of you can help me. My people need me to lead now that my father... He fell silent and swallowed hard. I must go to them, to what pathetically few remain, to those who have endured, rebirthed by the blood of those who now serve your beloveds. Kael'thas could have teleported instantly home, but instead he decided to travel so he could witness the devastation. Upon arriving, his people wanted answers from their prince. They were hungry, tired, devastated, yet the prince did not immediately address them. He first asked Lord Varan to show him to his father so he could pay his respects. The prince began with a blessing. I knew this day would come, but I never dreamed it would come so soon. I fear I am not ready, father. You are the king. You will always be the king. There was a sound of cloth rubbing, and though he could not see it, Lord Varan imagined the prince kneeling at his father's side. I only ever wanted to make you proud. Grant me the strength to be the man you hoped I would be. Grant me the strength to carry us through this time of despair. Grant me the strength now to lead our people through. The prince offered a final prayer. After that, the prince and his magi, they inspected the Sunwell and they came to a horrible conclusion. The resurrection of Kael'thas had corrupted the magical energies, and if they did not do something, then the corruption would not only spread through the land, it would spread through their own people. Even though the Sunwell was their birthright, their fountain of power, it had to be destroyed. Some of the High Elves, they protested of course, but eventually they realized that it had to be done. On top of that, Lei-Shen informed them all that trolls were gathering and they were getting ready for an attack. They too wanted to claim the Sunwell's power, so Kael'thas decided that they would deal with the corruption, with the remaining undead and all the assaulting trolls in one single strike. As Lei-Shen, Lord Varan and several others kept the enemies at bay, Kael'thas, Romaf and Alastor, they worked on their spell. Each of them held one piece of the Key of Three Moons, the same key that Arthas used to break the defenses, and it was recovered after Arthas was done with it. Romaf, Kael'thas and Astalor, they backpedaled as the pulsating pillar of blinding white engulfed the violet hues of the Sunwell. It radiated outward with a loud hum that muted all other sounds. With one final push, it pulsed, then snapped back to the Sunwell center. The hum was replaced with a sudden silence, broken only by the sound of rain hammering the earth. Now! Now! Kael'thas screamed, stretching his arms wide. One by one, the Farstriders, the healers, and finally the Magisters and Kael'thas himself, they disappeared as the blinding white beam exploded outwards, vaporizing everything and everyone in its path. And when it dissipated, it led nothing of the Sunwell but a dark and empty hole. The High Elves made the impossible choice of blowing up the Sunwell to prevent the corruption from spreading. Not all of its powers were gone though. The Red Dragon Kael'thas, he collected the remaining powers as he knew that sooner or later someone would realize the same, that these powers were there and come looking for them. He hid the powers away by disguising it as a young girl named Edwina Teague, but that's a bit of a side story that I'll cover next week, and on top of that I already did a video specifically for Edwina Teague. Now for Kael'thas, it was time to take his father's place and lead his people. The moon crystals used in their spell they had endured, but their power was greatly diminished and corrupted by the energies they have channeled. They decided that Prince Kael'thas would be the best man to keep them safe, so Kael'thas kept the 3 orbs. 2 on his shoulders and 1 above his head. The prince was now leader of their people, but he would not name himself king. His father would be the last king of the High Elves. They would now call themselves Blood Elves in honor of those who had laid down their lives to defend their way of life, to defend their home and their people. These Blood Elves would find out that being dependent for millennia on a source of power on the Sunwell, it left a certain hunger behind. They were addicted to magic, so would have to find a way to cope, to survive, to rebuild, to prevail.
Strangely, we found deliverance in the demon Illidan.
That story, however, I'll save for next week, since there are still many events to talk about and I've been going on for long enough. Next week, we'll take a look at how Kael'thas takes up the role as leader of his people and the choices he had to make to assure a future for all of them. Hello everyone! Last week we talked about the first part of Kael'thas' story, which was about the origin of the High Elves, some of the events that Kael'thas took part in, all the way to the moment that Arthas assaulted Quel'Thalas, corrupted the Sunwell by resurrecting Kael'thas, and forcing the now Blood Elves to blow up their Sunwell. This week we're going to continue the storyline, but before we can talk about Kael'thas, we'll first have to talk about some very important events that happened after the fall of Quel'Thalas. So let's dive right into it, and let's begin, shall we? The necromancer Kael'thas was resurrected and put on the task of summoning Archimonde into the world of Azeroth. This was the next step in the Burning Legion's plan of conquering the planets, and the summoning was successful. Archimonde arrived and simply destroyed the city of Dalaran, and afterwards he set his eyes on the ancient enemies of the Legion, the Night Elves and the World Tree Nordrassil. Remember that 10,000 years ago the Night Elves and Kael'thas' ancestors, they stood together against the Burning Legion, and Archimonde remembered that they were a great threat to their plans. Tyrande Whisperwind had also fought in that war, and when she realized that Archimonde had returned, it was time to awaken her beloved Malfurion Stormrage from the Emerald Dream. Even the so-called betrayer Illidan Stormrage was released from his prison, and all of them worked against the Legion, although each did it in their own way. Luckily for the Night Elves, they would not stand alone. The resurrected and now uncorrupted Guardian Medivh, he'd gathered both the Horde and the survivors of Lordaeron, led by Jaina Proudmoore. Together, they held off Archimonde long enough for Malfurion to set his trap, and in the end, they blew up the World Tree, they destroyed the Night Elves' immortality, but they also stopped Archimonde and the Legion's invasion. This did not end the story of Warcraft 3 though. Since releasing Illidan, it had helped them against the Legion, but his warden Maiev Shadowsong, she could not let him go. On top of that, Illidan had gone further towards the dark side by absorbing the skull of Gul'dan, and now even his appearance was that of a demon. Banished by his own twin brother, things were not looking good for Illidan. He was now on his own mission, since after he did his part fighting against the Legion, he was contacted by Kil'jaeden himself.
Illidan, in the past you have been both friend and foe to the Burning Legion. But by consuming the skull of Gul'dan, you sealed our defeat in this world. I come to offer you a second chance to serve us.
What would you have me do, Great One?
My creation, the Lich King, has betrayed me. He dared to break the pact that binds him to my will. But his spirit still lies trapped inside the frozen throne of Icecrown. Destroy it for me, and I will grant you your heart's desire.
It shall be done, Great One. It shall be done.
Ner'zhul, the Lich King, the one who had corrupted Arthas, manipulated events behind the plague. He never wanted to work for Kil'jaeden or the Legion, and he was working on breaking out. Illidan was put on the task of destroying the Lich King in Northrend, and to complete his mission, he would require some allies. He did his magic to summon the Naga from the depths, the Naga who used to be Highborn that stayed at Queen Azshara's side. To destroy the Lich King, Illidan decided to enter the Tomb of Sargeras, collect the Eye of Sargeras, which is an artifact to power his spell and give him enough power to complete the task. He managed to collect the item, but his warden Maiev Shadowsong, the one who had kept him imprisoned for 10,000 years, she was hot on his tail. She, together with Tyrande and Malfurion, they were trying to stop Illidan, bring him to justice, which finally brings us to the moment where Kael'thas enters the story. Despite stepping away from Dalaran and the Council of Six, as he had informed Jaina that he was leaving there, Kael'thas had decided to join the remaining military of Lordaeron to fight against the undead. He and his people had discovered that blowing up the Sunwell, it might have stopped the corruption, but it also left a hunger deep inside. They were addicted to the magic, to their fountain of power, but Kael'thas had bigger things to worry about right now, since he was trying to escort his caravan away from the approaching undead. Moving wasn't that easy though, undead troops were everywhere, but thankfully Kael'thas met with Tyrande and Maiev, who offered him their help.
Ishnu Daldieb, Kael'thas. I am Maiev Shadowsong, and this is Tyrande Whisperwind. We are hunting a powerful demon that arrived here recently.
Curious. I don't know about any demon, but something's riled the undead based at Dalaran. They've been hounding us day and night. We were about to abandon this post and seek refuge on the other side of the river Aralas.
Then we shall lend you our aid, young Kael.
Wait, we have no time for this.
Maiev was obsessed with hunting down Illidan, and she disagreed with Tyranda's choice of offering help to Kael'thas, but Tyrande remembered the part his ancestors played during the War of the Ancients, and they would honor that debt. On top of that, Kael'thas would help them track down Illidan after their escort mission was complete, so they set out together. All was going well, until they arrived at Pyrewood. The undead ambushed them, and there was no way that the caravan would survive another assault. Tyrande told Kael'thas to get his caravan across the bridge, while she would hold off the undead. Blessed by the powers of Elune, Tyrande was able to stand up against the endless stream of undead, but the bridge beneath her feet crumbled and the river dragged her away.
We must hurry to save her. That current will take her straight into the heart of the undead lands.
No, Kael. Tyrande is a soldier. She knew the risks she took. We have a greater mission to accomplish now, and our time grows short. Your people are now safe. You will uphold your end of the bargain and help me hunt the demon I seek.
Maiev would let nothing stand in the way of capturing Illidan. Back at base, he told Malfurion that Tyrande had fallen, that she had fought valiantly, but in the end was torn apart in front of her own eyes. Malfurion was devastated and furious at Illidan, since his twin brother was the reason why they came here in the first place, was the reason for losing his beloveds. In the meantime, Kael'thas' scouts had found Illidan at the ruins of Dalaran, where he was working a spell so powerful that it would not only destroy the Lich King, it was tearing Northrend apart. Together, the three of them rode out to confront Illidan, but Maiev's lie would quickly catch up to her.
Illidan Stormrage, for recklessly endangering countless lives and threatening the very balance of the world, I hereby sentence you to death.
Too much blood has been spilled on your account, Illidan. Even now, I can feel the lands of Northrend reeling from the spell you cast. Imprisonment will not be enough this time.
I will execute him myself.
Fools! Can you not see? The spell we channeled was meant to strike at the undead, our common enemy. My mission was to destroy the Lich King's stronghold of Icecrown.
And no heed to the cost! Because of you, Tyrande is dead!
What? Your pardon, Lord Stormrage, but the priestess may still be alive. She was swept downriver, but it's premature to simply assume
Silence,
that...
Kael.
You told me she was torn apart. You lied to me.
There was still a chance that Tyrande had survived, and Malfurion teamed up with his twin brother to go and rescue his beloved. Illidan had also loved Tyrande, even though she did not feel the same for him, and their mission was successful. Now, failing his mission given by Kil'jaeden, failing to destroy the Lich King, had left Illidan with a big problem, since Kil'jaeden did not easily forgive, nor did he forget. He decided to leave Azeroth behind and jump into a portal to the destroyed homeworld of the Orcs, the planet of Outlands. Right behind him, Maiev quickly followed, since she couldn't let go of her prey and she wanted to bring Illidan to justice. Meanwhile, Kael'thas Sunstrider didn't really play a role in these events. He'd stayed behind and he met up with Othmar Gerethos, Grand Marshal of the Lordaeron's military.
You are late, Prince Kael'thas. I thought you elves prided yourselves on punctuality.
It could not be helped, Lord Garethos. We ran into a group of night elves from across the sea, and...
I am not interested in your fanciful excuses. You elves are here to serve the Alliance. Thus you will obey my commands to the letter. Is that clear?
Yes, Lord Garethos.
Now, the undead have begun a new offensive to retake Dalaran. Their primary strike force marched south through Silverpine, but we managed to halt its advance at the base of the mountains.
My men are ready to fight, my lord. When shall we leave for the front?
We will be leaving immediately, but your people will be staying here. Our scouts report that a second strike force may be heading this way from the east. I need you to repair the outlying observatory so that we can monitor that region.
But, my lord, we are warriors, not...
You have your orders, Prince Kael'thas. I trust your elven ears heard them clearly enough. Move out!
Insolent son of a... Let's get this over with.
Gerethos, let's just say blunt, he was a racist asshole placed in a position more for his father's reputation and title than due to his own abilities. In the past, while fighting to defend Quel'Thalas against the first Orcish horde invasion, a band of orcs broke from the invading force and they murdered Gerethos' family. Gerethos had always blamed the elves for the loss of his home and family, and he was now abusing his position and his power while taking out on Kael'thas and the Blood Elves. Instead of using them to their full potential in the front line as the fighting force that they were, he put them on the task of repairing observatories. This task was near impossible, since they would need a gold mine to get a base running, and this gold mine was located on the other side of the lake.
Damn. We'll have to find a way across the lake to reach the outlying gold mine. Naga, you fought for the demon Illidan.
We are on our own now, good prince. I am called Lady Vash. My brethren and I come in peace to offer you our aid.
You have nothing I need, witch.
Is that so? I thought you might require boats to reach the observatories you seek.
And you would give these freely? Why should I trust you, my lady?
Our two races share a common ancestry, Kael. Now, against the undead, we share a common peril. These boats are merely a gesture of goodwill.
Then, I accept your offer. Thank you.
Lady Vash, Illidan's ally and leader of the Naga, offered her aid to Kael'thas and his people, and Kael'thas accepted. Kael'thas returned from the front lines and was not pleased with Kael'thas' actions.
Hail, Lord Kael'thas. The observatories have been repaired as you requested. We were just about to...
I received ill news from the front line. Is it true that you've consorted with the vile Naga?
Well, yes, my lord. They helped us cross the lake. I assure you they pose no threat to us or to...
They are inhuman and must be crushed like any other enemy. Be careful where you place your loyalties, Blood Elf. I will not tolerate treason in my ranks. Now I must return to the front. You will remain here and wait for further orders.
Kael'thas already had no love for Kael'thas and his elves, and he despised the Naga even more. Kael'thas is told to be careful now, to not accept any more help from the Naga, but his next mission placed him with an impossible choice. He was ordered to crush the undead forces before the rest of the troops would march on Dalaran, but he had to do it without his foot soldiers, without the cavalry, without any support teams, as they were needed at the front lines.
This is preposterous. Am I to assault the undead with nothing but sticks and harsh language?
The Grand Marshal has great confidence in your abilities. Be creative.
Kael'thas. I'm starting to hate that man.
Naturally, he had no troops. The undead, they quickly demolished the established bases, and Kael'thas was struggling. Luckily for him, Lady Vash and the Naga were once again willing to offer him aid. The prince didn't want to anger Kael'thas further or accept the help from the Naga, but in this situation, he saw no other option. Together with Vash and their forces, they were able to successfully crush the undead and complete his mission.
You have my thanks, lady. This victory would not have been possible without your aid. Though I fear I may have doomed myself by accepting it.
The human you served trusts no race but his own. His sense of honor runs no deeper than his tolerance.
It is loyalty and duty that bind me to him, and to this failing alliance. But now those tenets seem as distant as our ruined homeland. All I know is that my brethren and I hunger for something more.
Then perhaps, young Kael, it is time to find a new path to power and glory.
I can't explain it exactly, but ever since our homeland was destroyed, my brethren and I have felt empty, almost drained of our spirit. There is a hunger now that has hardened our hearts.
I know this hunger, Kael. Like us, your people are addicted to magic. It flowed through your veins for over 10,000 years. And now, with the corruption of your land and the Sunwell that empowered you,
we have been cut off from our power, from our birthright. Without a new source of magic, my people will surely die.
There are other founts of power in this world, Kael. Demons, for instance.
You speak of madness, my lady. We will
never be that desperate.
Grand Marshal Kael'thas had returned, and Kael tells Vash to go since he can't guarantee her safety. Kael'thas saw the Naga escape, and now he had all the proof he needed to execute every traitorous Blood Elf present. Kael'thas and his people were imprisoned, and they were placed within the dungeons of Dalaran to await their execution. Where once he was a respected member of the Council of Six, now they were getting ready to take his life, but once again it's Vash to the rescue. She liberated the prince and offered him a choice. He could either stay here and be slain by the humans, or he could follow her into a darker path which would lead to a whole different world and a whole new destiny. She promised Kael'thas an answer to their burning hunger for magic, so the choice, it was easily made. Together they released the other Blood Elves, they held the portal as Kael'thas tried to stop them, and finally Kael'thas and Vash, they stepped through into Outlands. There they found out that the warder Maiev, she'd managed to capture Illidan and was escorting him back to his prison. It seemed like the Blood Elves would right away be able to prove their worth, so they liberated Illidan and they captured Maiev instead. Afterwards, Kael'thas explained who he was, why he had come, and he asked for Illidan's aid.
You were right to come to me, Kael. I share the pain of your addiction, your hunger for magic.
Can you help us, Lord Illidan? Can you cure us?
There is no cure, young one. But there are ways to feed the hunger. Follow me and I will grant your people more magic than they can imagine.
So be it. Lord Illidan, my fellow Blood Elves and I humbly pledge ourselves to your service.
Then arise, young Kael. You shall be my right hand, and the harbinger of my wrath.
What of your plans, Master?
Illidan explained to Kael'thas about the task he was given by Kil'jaeden. Considering that his mission had failed, Illidan decided that the best course of action was to take over Outlands and hope that Kil'jaeden, he would not be able to find them. To do this, they first cut off McFerrin from more reinforcements by closing the portals he was using to summon more demons into Outlands. They also teamed up with the Broken Akama, a former Draenei who had fought in the war against the Orcs. They had taken over his beloved temple of Karabor, they turned it into the Black Temple, and for this, he was more than willing to throw in his lot with Illidan, and all of their forces combined were able to take out the Orcs, the demons, and even overthrow McFerrin himself. The Black Temple was theirs, Illidan claimed the title of Lord of Outlands, but hiding away from someone like Kil'jaeden, it was not so simple.
What is this, Vash? Where did this storm come from?
Keep your head down, fool. Something terrible is drawing near.
Foolish little mongrel. You failed to destroy the frozen throne as I commanded. And still you thought to hide from me in this forsaken backwater. I thought you to be more cunning, Illidan.
Kil'jaeden, I was merely set back. I was attempting to bolster my forces. The Lich King will be destroyed. I promise you.
Still, these servitors you've gathered show some promise. I will give you one last chance, Illidan. Destroy the frozen throne, or face my eternal wrath.
Perhaps hiding here was not the most prudent decision. Still, the quest lies before us. Will you follow me into the cold heart of death itself?
The Naga are yours to command, Lord Illidan. Where you go, we follow.
The Blood Elves are yours as well, Master. We will drive the Scourge before us and shatter the frozen throne as you command.
And so their mission was clear. Illidan Stormrage, Lady Vash and Kael'thas Sunshine returned to Azeroth and marched upon the cold lands of Northrend to destroy the Lich King once and for all. They were not alone though, since Arthas had been summoned by the Lich King to come back to Northrend as well, so the race was on.
These elves are pathetic. It's no wonder we destroyed their homeland so easily.
Pity I wasn't there to stop you. It's been a long time, Arthas.
Prince Kael'thas, I haven't seen you since... You lead these elves?
This group, at least. What you faced here was merely a scouting force. Defeating Lord Illidan's army will be far more difficult.
Illidan?
He's behind this invasion?
He is. Our forces are vast, Arthas. Even now they march upon the ice-crowned glacier. You'll never make it in time to save your precious Lich King. Consider this payment for Kael'thas and other insults.
Other insults, like the one Kael'thas had to endure as he found out that Jaina's heart was given to Arthas. Together with Anub'arak, Arthas made his way through deep dark tunnels in an attempt to reach Icecrown before it was too late. They reached the Frozen Throne just in time, and the Lich King bestowed upon Arthas all the power he could spare. The prince knew exactly what he had to do, eradicate those that stood in his way, and on the battlefield Kael'thas got his chance for revenge. After you disappeared in so cowardly a fashion at our last confrontation, I admit, I'm as surprised to see your face again, Kil. Don't be upset that I stole Jaina from you. You should let that go and move on. After all, there's so much left in this world for you to enjoy. Oh wait, no there isn't. Damn you to hell, Arthas Menethil, Kael'thas snarled, trembling with outrage. You've taken everything I ever cared for. Vengeance is all I have left. Kael'thas and Arthas shot spells at each other, while Arthas tried to taunt the mage and break his concentration. I took your woman, he said, continuing to try and anger the mage, although he knew, and probably Kil knew, that Jaina had never belonged to the elf. I held her in my arms at night. She tasted sweet when I kissed her, Kil. She loathes you now, Kael'thas replied. You sicken and disgust her, Arthas. Anything she felt for you has since turned to hatred. Arthas tried to break Kael'thas' concentration to anger the mage, but instead it backfired and it made him wonder about the past, about how Jaina regarded him. This hesitation was all Kael'thas needed in his battle, and he shot fireball after fireball until Arthas and him, Frostmourne and his staff, they clashed. The rune blade was about to break the staff easily, but it did give Kael'thas enough time to draw his sword. The sword of his father and his ancestors, fellow Milorn, also known as Flamestrike. It was broken by Frostmourne before, but now reforged with magic, hatred, and a burning need for revenge. Arthas believed that the weapon would be weaker after mending it, but Elf's blade worked differently. They actually get stronger from reforging, as Arthas soon found out when the blade was able to hold up against his own Frostmourne. Snarling, Kael'thas lunged in, thinking to deal the death blow. But Arthas remembered training with Muradin long ago, and the dwarf's favorite trick suddenly filled his mind. He pulled his legs in tightly and kicked Kael'thas with all his strength. The mage let out a grunt and was hurled backwards into the snow. Gasping, the Death Knight flipped to his feet, hefted Frostmourne with both hands and plunged it down. Somehow, Flamestrike was there. The blades again strained against each other. Kael'thas' eyes burned with hatred. But Arthas was the stronger in armed combat, stronger with the stronger sword, despite Kael's gloating about how fellow Milorn was reforged. Slowly, as Arthas knew must happen, Frostmourne descended towards Kael'thas' bare throat. She hates you, Kael whispered, and Arthas cried out, fury blurring his vision for a moment, and shoved down with all his strength into the snow and frozen earth, since Kael'thas was gone. The Blood Elf Prince had teleported himself away, thinking that he had bought Illidan enough time to reach the Frozen Throne. Even though Arthas was unable to kill the prince, at least the Blood Elf was out of his way for a while, and his final opponent standing in his way of merging with Ner'zhul was none other than Illidan Stormrage, but even he fell to the might of Frostmourne. Arthas left the Night Elf, the demon, to die in the snow as he made his way up to the Frozen Throne. As you probably know, Arthas merged with the Lich King, he claimed its full power, while Illidan survived their encounter. He was picked up by Lady Vashj and Kael'thas, who dragged him back to Outland where he could recover and they could make another plan. They had failed Kil'jaeden once again. Kael'thas and his people were still hungry for power, and Illidan's encounter with Arthas would leave a mark on his sanity. However, I'll save that part of the story for next week, since I believe we've been going on for long enough. Next week we'll finish up the storyline, since the Blood Elves and Kael'thas, they had a very big part to play during the expansion The Burning Crusade. Hello everyone! Last week we did the second part of Kael'thas' story, in which we talked about the events of Warcraft 3, from Kael'thas joining the hunt for Illidan, all the way to him switching sides and actually teaming up with Illidan and moving to the planet of Outland. This week we take a look at the final part of his story, which took place during the Burning Crusade, so let's begin, shall we?
For nearly 7,000 years, the High Elves cultivated a shining magical kingdom, hidden deep within the forests of northern Lordaeron. But 5 years ago, the undead scourge invaded Kael'thas and drove the elves to the brink of extinction. Led by the evil Death Knight Arthas, the scourge destroyed the mystical Sunwell, thereby severing the elves from the source of their arcane power. Though the scars of that conflict are evident, the remaining elves have banded together and retaken much of their homeland. Calling themselves Blood Elves, these grim survivors are committed to regaining the vast powers they once commanded. Inspired by the leadership of their beloved prince, Kael'thas Sunstrider, the Blood Elves now seek new sources of arcane magic and the means of defending their land against the undying horrors of the Scourge. As one of the few surviving Blood Elves, you must master your thirst for magic and help shape the destiny of your people.
A lot of events of the story happened off-screen before we stepped through the Dark Portal and got our first look at Outland ourselves. I'll try to do my best to explain it as clear as possible, but just keep in mind that a whole bunch of stuff happens which ties into the overall storyline, and I won't tell it all chronological. Let's begin with Kael'thas and the events in Outland. Kael'thas and his troops claimed the area known as Netherstorm, while Lady Vash made her base within the Zangarmarsh and Illidan was hanging out in the Black Temple. Netherstorm was known as Farallon before Draenor was blown up and transformed into Outland. Members of the Alliance of Lordaeron, those that had followed the Horde to stop them after their second invasion, they built a base in this area, which Kael'thas decided to blow up. Archmage Vargov was the leader of the mages in this base sent by the Kirin Tor, but Kael'thas no longer held any allegiance to the Kirin Tor. A mana bomb was dropped upon Kirinvar village, wiping out nearly all of the troops, but the Archmage survived, was locked away in a tower, waiting for the day that the adventurers would come and save his life. Another mage of the Alliance of Lordaeron was also still trapped on Outland, Khadgar, who had once made a report to Kael'thas and the Council of Six. He was now a powerful mage in his own right. He had fought against the Horde, but he realized that a new evil was closing in all around them from the twisting nether. More foul than the Dark Orcs, it was the Burning Legion itself that sought to take hold of this Outland. In response, Khadgar used his magic to search the Great Dark Beyond to find some sort of help, and there he sent beings of immense light. It was Adal and his Naru that he had found, and Khadgar was able to convince Adal and his brethren to come back to Outland with him and join them in their fight against the Legion. The Naru did not show up with empty hands. They came with a fortress known as the Tempest Keep, which allowed them to travel through alternate dimensions from one location to another in the blink of an eye. Adal traveled to Shafraf City, but along the way he met up with Prophet Velen, leader of the Draenei, and Velen made a cryptic prophecy concerning the redemption of a people cursed by blood. Adal and the other Naru realized what was to come, and they left behind the Naru Mo'uru to defend the Tempest Keep as they made their way to the city. There, they teamed up with the Aldor, a faction of Draenei that had stayed behind after the fall of the city, and they had fought against Blood Elves loyal to Kael'thas. Now, with the arrival of the Naru, the Aldor quickly regained their strength, and reconstruction of the city began. Despite Adal and the Naru being against the Legion and Kil'jaeden, the same threats Illidan was trying to hide away from, for some reason, a group of Blood Elves was still sent to attack Adal and the city. Some speculate that this was a setup by Kael'thas to turn Adal and Illidan against each other, that Illidan had never given the order, and that Kael'thas just sent some troops and made it look like Illidan attacked the city. Others say that they didn't know what Adal was trying to do, that they didn't realize that Adal was against the Legion, so they simply wanted to take care of this threat, while another reason could be that Illidan was truly crazy and simply wanted to attack. Either way, regardless of the reason, a group of Blood Elves, led by Vorval the Seer, they were sent to assault the city. The Aldor's Exarchs and Vindicators, they lined up to defend the Terrace of Light, but something quite unexpected happened. The Blood Elves, they laid down their weapons in front of the city's defenders, and Vorval stormed into the Terrace of Light, demanding to speak to Adal. As the Naru approached him, Vorval kneeled before him and uttered the following words: "I've seen you in a vision, Naru. My race's only hope for survival lies with you. My followers and I are here to serve you." The defection of Voronval and his followers was the largest loss ever incurred by Kael's forces, and they weren't just any Blood Elves. These were many of the best and brightest amongst Kael's scholars and magisters, and they'd all been swayed by Voronval's influence. The Naaru accepted the defectors within their city, and they would be known as the Scryers. Now, a beautiful vessel like the Tempest Keep, it was the perfect target, which Kael'thas and his elves gladly took over. They assaulted the keep, they captured the Naaru Mu'uru who had stayed behind to try to defend the place, and they took over the facility. Velen and the Draenei realized that the time was now. They stormed the part of the Tempest Keep known as the Exodar, and they were planning to use it to escape Outlands. The Blood Elves, naturally they tried to hold them back, they failed at their mission, but they were able to sabotage the ship. This caused the Exodar to crash land on Azeroth, where the Draenei met with the Night Elves and would eventually join the Alliance. So that's what happened on Outland, but Kael'thas had not forgotten about his people still left on Azeroth. Illidan, he had taught the Blood Elf Prince how to cope with their magical hunger left behind after the destruction of the Sunwell. They learned how they could drain magical energies out of objects, but also out of magical beings, from arcane worms to even demons. Most of the Blood Elves that joined Kael'thas to Outlands, they were invigorated by this new method, and they decided to stay on the planet to further their studies. Grand Magister Romaf was sent back home to pass on Illidan's teachings, but not all of the Blood Elves were inclined to start sucking the magical life out of things and out of beings. Regent Lord Lor'themar Farran was placed in charge by Kael'thas to rule in his absence, and Lor'themar saw no other choice than to banish those that refused to embrace this new way of life. He couldn't rule a kingdom divided, so those that refused to drain the magical essence out of beings, they were banished, while the rest of their people started to heal. They used this new way of life, this newfound power to fight back against the undead, and they reclaimed their city. It seemed like Kael'thas had given them what he had promised, but draining magic, and especially fel magic, comes with side effects. As we've seen with the orcs, their skin turned green when they came in touch with fel magic, and even those that did not use fel magic themselves, they were still affected by it. For the Blood Elves, it wasn't their skin color that changed, instead their eyes turned from blue to green. You might think that this is a minor side effect, and honestly it is, but you need to understand that fel magic is like crack. It's addictive, it corrupts. Some went so far in their addiction for magic that they overindulge themselves and turn themselves into beings known as wretched, but the Blood Elves, they're a pragmatic race and they accepted the consequences.
There are other founts of power in this world, Kael. Demons, for instance.
You speak of madness, my lady. We will never be that desperate.
As the Draenei joined the Alliance, Lor'themar and the Blood Elves were also working towards joining the Alliance by rebuilding their bond with an ambassador from the Alliance, but it turned out that this ambassador was a spy. He, together with several sentinels, they were working on sabotaging the Blood Elves' arcane sanctums, but luckily they were exposed and the ambassador was executed. This meant that an alliance with the Alliance was off the table, but not all hope was lost. The former High Elf Sylvanas Windrunner, now Banshee Queen of the Forsaken, she offered her aid. She helped the Blood Elves with reinforcements against the Scourge, and she made arrangements for Lor'themar and the Blood Elves to join the Horde.
The Blood Elves will endure any hardship, overcome any obstacle, and emerge stronger than before.
So at this point, Kael'thas had sent instructions on how to drain magic, but he had another gift for his people. The captured Naaru Mu'uru was sent to Silvermoon, where the Blood Elf drained it of its holy light. Lady Liadrin, once devoted to the light, she'd lost her faith as the Scourge destroyed her world. She could not believe in a power that would forsake them in their hour of need, but with the arrival of Mu'uru, new opportunities presented themselves. This source of light would require no faith or devotion, it was taken and forced to bend to their will. Liadrin stepped up and took these powers, and she became the first of the Blood Knights, the first of the Blood Elf Paladins. Most of the population were not okay with what they were doing, draining such a holy being of his light. That was simply not okay, and at first they scorned Liadrin and those that had chosen to follow her path. Over time though, the Blood Knights, they gained more influence within their society, yet a devastating blow was waiting upon the horizon. As the Dark Portal opened up with the Burning Crusade expansion, Blood Elves stepped through to the so-called Promised Land to follow their beloved prince, but things did not go as expected. Which finally brings us to the events of the Burning Crusade. During that expansion, we got our first look at the planet of Outland, and the story that I just told you is scattered in pieces and told by different characters. Now in Netherstorm, we found out that Kael'thas had been draining magical energies, but he also decided to change his allegiance from Illidan to Kil'jaeden. According to Magister Felindorn, Kael'thas knew about Illidan's insanity, which came upon him as he was defeated by Arthas and Icecrown, and since Illidan was now insane, he switched paymasters accordingly. Teaming up with Illidan was bad enough, but playing for Team Burning Legion was a step too far, and plans were made to stop the Blood Elf Prince, so we attacked different parts of the Tempest Keep. The Mechanar was turned into a factory to create large amounts of power which they stored away in mana cells. The Botanica was used to investigate the nanotechnology, experiment with it, and they experimented on the flora found in Outland. Here they worked on creating and manipulating life, and they were trying to figure out how to use this power to benefit their people. The Arcatraz was a prison of the Naru, where they kept the most terrifying and dangerous creatures they encountered on their journeys. Kael'thas had his people guard the place, of course, but they were quickly corrupted by the inmates, and we assaulted all these different areas and we cleared it out. Then there was the Eye, the final part of the Tempest Keep, in which Kael'thas himself resided. Entering this area was not so easy, it would require a key to get in, and this key was in the possession of Adal himself. Now you might imagine that the Naru would be very happy for people to reclaim the Tempest Keep, but the Naru didn't really care about Kael'thas taking over their vessel. They didn't see the necessity of taking it back, but that all changed once we found out that Kael'thas held the Cipher of Damnation. The Cipher of Damnation held the words once used by Gul'dan to raise the massive volcano that you can see in Shadowmoon Valley, and the spell severed the final ties the orcs held with the elements. This spell could cause devastation, so after proving our worth to Adal, he grants us the key, and we're allowed to go into the keep and take care of business. Now Kael'thas' allegiance to the Legion and his command over the Cipher of Damnation, they were not the only reasons that we went into the Tempest Keep. The broken Draenei Akama had realized that teaming up with Illidan had done him no good, and together with the Ward of Maiev, they made plans to assault the Black Temple and take out the Betrayer. Unfortunately, Seer Olum, one of their allies, he was captured by the Naga, and they were torturing him in order to get information. He didn't tell them a thing about their plans, but he knew that Illidan, if he got his hands on him, he would rip the secrets from his flesh, so Olum knew that there was only one way to keep their secrets safe. He asked Akama to take his life, and with the deed done, Illidan showed up, and Akama quickly came up with a new plan.
Master, we have found the traitor who escaped Vash. His body lies in front of me, lifeless.
You disappoint me, Akama. I wanted to question the treacherous worm myself. I'm beginning to question your allegiance, Broken.
But sire, you have misjudged my actions. I do have knowledge of someone close to you who plans to betray you. It is that dog, Kael'thas. He has aligned with Kil'jaeden and intends to replace you as Lord of Outland.
I do not sense lies in your voice, Akama. That Kael'thas would betray me does not come as a big surprise. I'm not as oblivious as some would think. That one of your own was involved with him puts your loyalties into question. Send your ash tongue into Tempest Keep and slay his most prized possession, the phoenix known as Alhar. I must know that you are not on his side. Do not think of betraying me, Broken. We both know who owns your soul.
It will be done, my lord.
Akama placed Kael'thas and Illidan against each other, and were sent in to kill the Phoenix Alar. A few have asked me if I could give you some backstory about Alar, but not much is known. Wikipedia says the following: Phoenixes are powerful avian creatures summoned from the elemental plane. During the Third War, the Phoenix was the most powerful spell a Blood Mage could cast. The idea of a creature rising from its own ashes also symbolizes the Blood Elves who rose from the ashes of the slaughtered High Elves. Thus, the Phoenix serves as an essential symbol of of the Blood Elf race found on their flags, banners, tabards and racial crests. Powerful blood mages, like Kael'thas, they can summon phoenixes, and the phoenix god is Alar, Kael's beloved pet. So that's a little bit of a backstory behind Alar. Now besides Alar, we also faced a Void Reaver and Solarian, but neither really have much of a backstory. Now with these two defeated, it was time to face off against the Blood Elf Prince, but Kael'thas didn't come alone. With him were his 4 advisors.
Energy. Power. My people are addicted to it. A dependence made manifest after the Sunwell was destroyed. Welcome to the future. A pity you're too late to stop it. No one can stop me now. Salama Ashalanore.
Veladret the Darkener, Lord Sanguinar, Capernian and Master Engineer Telonicus, they were Kael'thas' advisors, but again, they don't have much of a backstory. Some speculate that Lord Sanguinar is a relative of Valera Sanguinar, but the only confirmed connection that I could find is having the same last name, so it's uncertain if they're from the same family or if they even knew each other. Now after taking out the advisors, the weapons that they used, all 4 advisors at the same time, we finally face off against Kael'thas himself. With the legendary weapons in hand dropped by his advisors, whole raids tried to bring down the Blood Elf Prince, who used mind control, who summoned phoenixes, and did all kinds of magical spells in an attempt to wipe out raids. Eventually, Kael'thas had enough. He called upon the powers they collected within Netherstorm, and this increased his size, powers and abilities. Not even that was enough to stand up against the heroes, and Kael'thas was eventually defeated, and we brought back one of his verdant spheres as proof of demise. As you turn in one of these spheres, silence descends upon Shafrath, and Adal's thoughts invade your mind. Kael'thas' Sunstride has been defeated, and the time to strike at the remaining Blood Elves in Tempest Keep is now. Take heart, and let Adal's song of battle empower you. Yet, Kael'thas wasn't done yet. He appears in front of Adal and says, "Your monkeys failed to finish the job, Naru. Beaten, but alive. The same mistake was not made when we took command of your vessel. All for what? Trinkets? You are too late. The preparations have already begun. Soon the master will make his return. And there is nothing you or that fool Illidan can do to stop me. You have both served me in your own right, unwittingly. Lay down your arms and succumb to the might of Kil'jaeden."
Illidan's agenda was short-sighted. I grew impatient. In secret, I began harvesting what energies I could. I had a brief taste of true power. Before it was taken from me. But all is not lost. The Sunwell's essence endured, kept hidden by those who sought to protect it. Now, I have returned with the knowledge that sacrifices must be made before we can reclaim our birthright. I have forged a new alliance. Soon, the blessed rays of the Sunwell will shine once again and usher into this world the one who will deliver us all.
Tempest Keep was merely a setback, as Kael'thas was brought back to health by Priest Delrisa, who stuck a gem in his chest and made him good to go. He did change quite a bit. Obviously, he lost one of his spheres, and since a lot of fel magic was used to bring him back to health, he now looked sickly pale and not really good, in my opinion. Now the next step in their plans was to bring their master Kil'jaeden into the world of Azeroth, and for this they plan to use the remaining powers of the Sunwell and create a massive portal. As I mentioned in part 1 of this storyline, blowing up the Sunwell did not destroy all of its power. Some of it remained, and the Red Dragon Corialstras, he hid it away by transforming the powers into a living girl with fake memories and a fake family. This girl and Vinatik would eventually meet with the Blue Dragon Kael'thas, and together they took out the betrayer of the High Elves, Darkan Dark Dravir, who wanted to claim the remaining powers of the Sunwell, but it was eventually defeated. After these events, the Blood Elves, like Lor'themar, they promised to keep Endvina a secret to the world, but apparently somebody told Kael'thas, and they did not expect their prince to turn on them. He had Endvina captured and was planning to use her to power the portal, and on top of that, Kael'thas also decided to attack his own people and steal back the Naru Mu'uru. Lei-Shen of the Blood Knights, she saw this attack with her own eyes, and she decided to travel to Shafra City and talk with Adal. In this conversation, Adal explained to Lei-Shen that events took place just as they were supposed to happen, and that Mu'uru had already accepted his fate. The prophecy spoken by Velen had come true, the prophecy that said, "Silvery moon, washed in blood, led astray into the night, armed with sword of broken light. Broken, then betrayed by one, standing there bestride the sun. At darkest hour, redemption comes, in knightly lady, sworn to blood." Lei-Shen realized that Kael'thas was a false prince, and she renounced her loyalties to the House Sunstrider and decided to join Adal and the Shattered Sun offensive in their battle against Kael'thas and Kil'jaeden. Together, we assaulted the Isle of Kael'thas, unlocked it piece by piece, and within the Magister's Terrace, we found Kael'thas again.
Don't look so smug. I know what you're thinking. But Tempest Keep was merely a setback. Did you honestly believe I would trust the future to some blind, half-night elf mongrel? Oh, no. He was merely an instrument. A stepping stone to a much larger plan. It has all led to this. And this time, you will not interfere. My demise accomplishes nothing! The Master will have you! You will drown in your own blood! The world shall burn!
Plans were already in motion, and Kael'thas believed that we would be unable to stop Kil'jaeden and the Legion, but of course he was wrong. The invasion was prevented, and as a bonus, the core of the Naru Mu'uru who we had taken out in the Sunwell itself, it was used by Velen to reignite the Sunwell. This gave the Blood Elves their source of power back that they were so desperately searching for, and this time the magic was pure and even had a touch of the holy light. Kael'thas had fallen to the dark side, but in a strange, crooked way, his actions still led to a path of redemption and allowed his people to find their source of power.
Blessed ancestors! I feel it. So much love. So much grace. There are no words. Impossible to describe.
Salvation, young one. It waits for us all. Farewell.
And that's the story of Kael'thas Sunstrider. That's the legacy of the Blood Elf Prince. Lor'themar Varan would go on leading their people, and the Blood Elves would keep on fighting for their place in this world. I want to take the end of this video to talk about a few things that I haven't covered in the story just yet, but keep in mind that some of this is purely my opinion, and some of it is pure speculation. Let's first talk about what Kael'thas and the rest of them were actually trying to do in Outland, since that's still not entirely clear. Let's first face the fact that being part of the lore during the Burning Crusade was not the best thing to happen, since there are a lot of plot holes, a lot of developed story that was changed simply to turn them into bosses, and a lot of events that were never shown and only told in pieces. Many theories float around as to what exactly they were trying to do, and I personally like the theory of creating a gigantic new well of eternity. Remember, the Lady Vash, she was taking control of the waters in the Zangarmarsh, while Kael'thas was collecting vast amounts of energy within the Nether Storm. Lady Vash and Kael'thas still held a vial filled with water from the original Well of Eternity, so they could have combined Illidan's knowledge with their power collected, with their water collected, and they could have gone for a big fountain of power. This would also clear up the confusion as to why Kael'thas didn't simply use his vial to create a new Sunwell, similar to how his ancestors had done it in the past. He was holding it out for the big master plan, for the big source of power, but eventually he saw that Illidan was crazy and he decided to team up with Kil'jaeden. Now during the Warlock Greenfire questline, we found another mysterious thing, which is that Illidan had already created a big fountain of power within the Black Temple. They speculated that this might be the answer Illidan had promised to Kael'thas, but for some reason Illidan never delivered. Was it truly insanity that made him do this, or was he actually smart enough to realize that keeping Kael'thas dependent on him would assure his loyalty? Who knows what Illidan was thinking, who knows why he refused to give up this fountain of power, but that's how it all went down. We took out the so-called bad guys in Outland, we saved the day, yet some still wonder if Kael'thas truly was a bad guy. In my opinion, like I mentioned earlier, Burning Crusade was not the best moment in WoW's lore, and some characters were turned into bad guys simply for the sake of being a bad guy. It's up to you to decide what Kael'thas was, but I think Lor'themar described the road taken by Kael'thas beautifully in his short story In the Shadows of the Sun. In that story, Lor'themar was dealing with being forced to aid Sylvanas in the war against the Lich King, as the Blood Elves were still struggling to recover, but he had no choice. He was forced to deliver aid, or Sylvanas would pull back her forsaken troops and leave the Blood Elves to their fates. I deal with the devil indeed, but the Sunwell may never have been restored had we not sunk to those levels. Here I find myself so close to believing that the ends justify the means, but the ruins of the Magister's terrors will haunt me forever, reminding me of the fate I tempt with that fought. This is the line I walk, finally knowing that the actions I take in necessity are nonetheless indefensible. Those truths can never be reconciled, but sometimes I can hold them both side by side and almost understand. I might call this revelation profound if I were ignorant enough not to realize that I'm only learning what Kael'thas and Anastarian before him had also learned in their turns. All we can do is walk the road we are given with such dignity as we can muster, each to our own glory or demise, and pray that there yet remains something of our own hearts when all is said and done. By the Sunwell, I hope that there will remain something of mine. The ogre story that takes us back to the planet of Draenor, where he lived a privileged life within Highmaul, where he learned from the most talented ogre sorcerers. A two-headed ogre that was seen as an omen of good fortune, and he gained an immense following amongst Highmaul's common ogres, but not amongst the higher-ups. His arrogance and lust for power that put him at odds with the ruling elite. The high-ranking ogres, they feared that his growing popularity, that would one day allow him to seize control of the city. They couldn't let that happen, so they tried to assassinate him, an attempt which he just narrowly survived as he fled from Highmaul. Cho'Gall at that moment wanted revenge, but he knew that he needed more power to make it happen. As he searched the world for knowledge and weapons, he came across the Shadow Council formed by Gul'dan, who had access to fell magic, more power that he hungered for. This was around the time where Kil'jaeden had found the Draenei living on the planet of Draenor, and he wanted them dead. They made contact with Gul'dan and manipulated events, promised the orc powers beyond his wildest dreams, and in exchange, he sold his people to the Legion. By manipulating events, they pitched the orcs against the Draenei, they formed a horde, and they had Black Hand to lead it. Well, in reality, it was actually Gul'dan and his Shadow Council that were pulling the strings from behind the curtains. Gul'dan was intrigued by Cho'Gall's confidence and lust for power, so he made the Ogre Mage his foremost apprentice, and he taught him the secrets of fell magic. He even told him of the Burning Legion's existence. But Cho'Gall, he didn't care. He was only interested in the power, and although he pledged his loyalties to Gul'dan, the moment that the Orc and the Shadow Council, the moment that they ceased being useful, he was prepared to turn his back on them. Now another that joined the Shadow Council, that was Garou the Half-Orcan, a half-orc, half-Draenei slave who proved to be a ferocious fighter and possessed a keen intelligence and a gift with learning different languages. She eventually escaped from her enslavement and encountered the Shadow Council. Gul'dan sympathized with her to earn her trust, seeing how they both knew the pain of living as an outcast, and the moment that she let down her guard, the Shadow Council struck. They placed magical spells on her mind, spells which kept her obedient and allowed Gul'dan to see what she saw, and they used her as the perfect assassin, taking out the voices that rose up against the changes amongst the orcs. She and Cho'Gall would have a lot of story together in the future, but we'll get to that later on. Let's first focus on the war on Draenor. While the Horde was forming and rising up, the Pale were doing pretty well in the catacombs beneath Necrand, and word of their otherworldly abilities that eventually reached Gul'dan. The Orc Warlock cared little for the stories, but Kil'jaeden was intrigued, and he pressed Gul'dan to ensure victory at any cost. That meant investigating the Pale and finding out if their magic could potentially strengthen the Horde. That was a job given to Cho'Gall. The history of the Pale is that they used to be orcs that traveled to the Throne of Elements to seek the spirit's blessing. This was their rite of passage of becoming a shaman. When doing so, they enter a trance to attune their minds to the elements. While some are found worthy, others are not. When they reached beyond the veil of the physical world, some of them found themselves not reaching out to the elements, but instead found something much darker. These poor souls accidentally glimpsed a realm beyond Draenor, the realm of the void, and what the orcs saw drove them insane. The ones who actually survived communing with the Dark Ones, they were exiled from their clan, white skulls tattooed on their faces marking them as dead to their people, and they were forced to live in the caves beneath the ground. When the Draenei crash landed on their planet, the Naru-Kur had turned from the light to the void, and he was now spewing out void energies that drew the attention of the Pale. They started to tap into the void energies that bled from Kur and seeped into the ground. Through the study of this power, the outcasts were able to speak with the Void Lords, and the Void Lords that were those dark entities responsible for sending out the old gods in the hopes of corrupting a slumbering Titan spirit. These monstrous entities responded to the orcs, bombarding them with visions of apocalypse and revealing the secrets of using their shadow magic. Over time, the void energies would turn the exile skin a sickly white, and they would call themselves the Pale. So Cho'Gall, he was sent to check out the Pale, and if they proved as mighty as the rumors claimed, he was commanded to bring them into the Horde. Cho'Gall stormed into the Pale's underground caves, expecting a fight, but the Pale, they did not resist his intrusion. They were quite eager to share their prophecy of doom, which they called the Hour of Twilight. They saw this as a time when shadow would envelop the entire universe and snuff out all life in existence.
Make peace with your end, for the hour of twilight falls.
Like with Gul'dan, Cho'Gall didn't really care about what they believed in. Their prophecies of doom meant very little. He was far more interested in the power that they had, their ability to wield shadow magic, something that he had never experienced. This would serve as a potent weapon for the Horde, so to win the Pale over, he claimed that the Horde was a means to an end, a weapon by which they could bring about their hour of twilight. The Pale reveled in this opportunity to serve as agents of apocalypse. They joined the Horde and they formed a brand new clan known as the Twilight's Hammer Clan. And as Cho'Gall learned to master their shadow magic, he also began to see the truth in the Pale's prophecy. The war with the Draenei that eventually came to an end, with the major cities brought low and nearly all of the Draenei wiped out. Black Hand, now officially in the role of war chief, he was not done quite yet, as he set his eyes on the rest of the world, making sure that the orcs dominated the planet of Draenor. The Warsong clan, together with the Twilight's Hammer clan, they were sent out to topple the ogre bastion of Heimal. Now both Grommash Hellscream and Cho'Gall, they both took part at the siege, and both were quite happy with the opportunity to slay all these ogres. For Cho'Gall, this siege was the opportunity that he had been waiting for, the vengeance upon those who had exiled him from the city. He personally sought out and killed the stronghold's leader, Imperator Margok. Both were two-headed ogres, both were very gifted sorcerers, but only Cho'Gall had learned the secrets of both fell magic and the void. With these powers under his control, he bound Margok to his throne, and he burned the ogre mage alive.
Your reign has come to an end. The infinite night begins. Darkness come. I am king.
So here we are. The orcs have done what Kil'jaeden asked of them. They've nearly exterminated all of the Draenei and conquered most of the planet, but it came at a great price. Demon blood was now pumping in their veins, the use of fell magic had corrupted their planet, and worst of all, Kil'jaeden had stopped communicating with Gul'dan. The Dark Titan Sargeras, he saw the orcs as a great opportunity, a great weapon which he could unleash upon Azeroth to weaken his defenses and get it ready for another invasion from the Legion. He was the one who ordered Kil'jaeden to remain silent, to not deliver the promised power to Gul'dan, since the Horde was flush with victory, and that made them arrogant and hard to control. He needed them to become desperate, on the brink of self-destruction, so desperate that they would do anything if it meant saving their race. Years went by, years with silence, hunger, orcs turning on each other, some of them even falling to madness, until the time was right. Sargeras' spirits had infiltrated the Guardian of Azeroth named Medivh, that which was supposed to guard the planet from threats like the Legion, that had actually fallen into their hands. Medivh made contact with Gul'dan. He showed him the world of Azeroth, a world with food, space, and plenty of enemies for the orcs to kill. They built up the Dark Portal, they connected the two planets with each other, and the first Horde invasion could begin. An invasion which Cho'Gall and the Twilight's Hammer joined. Stepping onto Azeroth, a planet infected by the old gods, the dark creatures of the void. It was quite an experience for them. The void's call had become louder and clearer than it ever had, driving the orcs into a state of ecstasy. This was seen as a sign of destiny. They had found a place where they belonged, where they would bring about the Hour of Twilight. The Old God's presence had a profound impact on Cho'Gall. He had believed that the Void was a powerful force, but he still didn't care for the Twilight Hammer's prophecies and their dark gods. But here, on this planet, he had undeniable proof of their existence. Now, hearing these whispers, it had a bit of an effect on the Twilight Hammer, as they became disobedient and sometimes simply wandered off, never to be seen again. War Chief Blackhand thought about making an example out of them by erasing the entire clan from existence, but Cho'Gall intervened. He told them that the Hour of Twilight was near, and that the Horde's success would be the best way to bring that moment to fruition. Until then, they simply needed the Horde. They needed to keep up appearances with Blackhand and obey their true masters in secret. The clan, they agreed with his words. Cho'Gall became their official chieftain, and the Twilight's Hammer became obedient, effective soldiers, while in secret, all they did was in the name of the dark gods. The old gods seemed to be happy with the Horde's lust for war and destruction, so it was no great sacrifice to continue with the conquest of the world. As the weeks went by, and Cho'Gall attuned himself more to the old gods, he branded the Twilight's Hammer prophecies onto the skin of some of the pale orcs. He then cut off their flesh to form pages, to create a book that codified the teachings about the Void. This book, called the Twilight Canticle, it would become a source of power and motivation for the followers of the old gods for decades. Now, I tried to find out what exactly happened to this book, if it played any major role in the storyline, but apparently it hasn't really been used yet, so that story might be a topic for the Chronicles Volume 3. Now, despite the Guardian secretly being corrupted, conquering the humans was not that easy. Not all of the clans had stepped through the Dark Portal. The years of war and hunger, it had weakened them. So Gul'dan, he fought back to their time on Draenor, fought back to how he had empowered the Horde by breaking the world's elements and infused their energy into the orcs. Seeing how Azeroth also had elemental spirits far stronger than those on Draenor, he figured that they could do the same here, and his Shadow Council spies, they informed him about massive elemental activity near a smoldering volcano called Black Rock Mountain. Cho'Gall did indeed confirm the reports, but he kept some information to himself. He did indeed sense the elemental power within the mountain, but it also discovered that these spirits were actually in league with the old gods. When the Shadow Council tried to conquer the mountain, they found out that the level of raw elemental might, it was simply too great. They were burned from the inside, as this was the domain of Ragnaros the Firelord, he who commanded innumerable lesser elementals, as well as the Dark Iron Dwarfs, who, in ages past, they had been foolish enough to unleash his might back onto the world. Before there would be outright war, Cho'Gall worked towards peace. His connection to the old gods, it allowed him to step into the mountain, and after extensive conversations with the dwarves and Ragnaros' elemental lieutenants, an accord was reached. The Dark Ones, the old gods, they were delighted with the work that the Horde was doing, and they weren't against helping, but they had no intention of giving even a scrap of power to the Burning Legion puppets. Let's not forget that Sargeras' whole reason of forming the Burning Legion, that was actually to stop the Void Lord's plans, so instead of giving them power, they did allow the Shadow Council to set up a small refuge called Blackrock Spire, high up in the mountain. If their warlocks would stay in that area, then they would not be disturbed by Ragnaros or his followers. Gul'dan was of course disappointed that they had failed in conquering the mountain's power, but a refuge would do. Tensions between Blackhand and Gul'dan, they were rising, so a place away from the War Chief eyes, that was priceless. Blackhand was told about their failure, and he had expected nothing less. He was more than ready to crush Stormwind City without the help of stolen elemental power, but the city was not without its defenses. As Kil'jaeden, Deadeye, and Cho'Gall were ordered to lead the assault, and Melofar, he took the bulk of their soldiers behind the Horde lines, cutting a massive line through their forces. Bleeding Hollow and Twilight's Hammer, they had to break off their attack and try to push back the knights in the rear, but this only worked to the humans' advantage, as it allowed Stormwind to open its gates and strike the orcs, like a hammer to Lofar's anvil. There was no way that the orcs could fight off the assault from both sides, so the only choice was to run. It was the biggest disaster that the Horde had ever suffered. Blackhand was furious, nearly executed Kil'jaeden and Cho'Gall on the spot, but the Horde was pushed back, and for the moment, they had to come up with a new plan of attack. Meanwhile, Garona Half-Orcan had also joined this Horde invasion, and she had made contact with Medivh. Medivh, the real Medivh, felt sympathy for her, seeing how she was an outcast, and he was intrigued by her intelligence, by her entire existence. It was clear that Garona was no threat to him, and thanks to Gul'dan's endless cruelty, she had no real love for the Horde. He decided that it would be more valuable to have her as an ally, or even a friend amongst the orcs, than another spirit haunting his home, so he invited her to come back whenever she liked. She did just that, something that Medivh's new apprentice Khadgar could not really appreciate at first, but over time, they developed a friendship, and they even discovered that it was Medivh who had opened the portal. They quickly escaped the tower to get help from Stormwind, and when Gul'dan realized that Garona was in the same room as King Lane, remember, he could see what she could see, he tried to use his magic to force her to kill the king, but Garona was actually able to resist that murderous urge. Lothar, Khadgar and Garona, they then confronted the Guardian, and in that battle, Medivh assaulted her mind, tried to take control of Gul'dan's mental chains, and use her against her allies, but it was only partially effective. Confusion rippled through the half-orc, as she soon found it impossible to see the difference between friend or foe. She fled the tower and made her way back to Stormwind to inform King Lane of what had happened, but standing near the king, something snapped in her mind. She had resisted Gul'dan's order to kill the king before, but her fight with the Guardian, it had scrambled her thoughts. The line between friend and foe blurred. Her willpower faltered, and with tears streaming down her face, she obeyed the command and plunged a dagger into Lane's heart. Garona escaped to keep in the confusion that followed, and without their king, Stormwind eventually fell to the Horde, forced to flee to the lands of Lordaeron. While Medivh was taken care of, Gul'dan had actually been busy trying to search his mind to find more information on the Tomb of Sargeras, that which was promised to him if he was able to conquer the world. As Gul'dan had been left empty-handed before, he figured that it was wiser to get the information on his own terms, but unfortunately, while he was probing around in Medivh's mind, that was the time where they killed him, which left the orc in a coma. This was the moment that Orgrim Doom had been waiting for. He had been informed about the corruption of the Horde by his friends Durthan and Draka of the Frostwolf clan, Thrall's parents, who both lost their lives for giving this information. Doomhammer had enough of the corruption and the lies and decided that it was time to take control of the Horde. He challenged the Warchief Blackhand to Mak'gora, a duel to the death to claim the title of Warchief. With the mighty Doomhammer in hand, Orgrim was able to secure victory. He told all of them that they had been used and lied to, and made ready to cleanse the corruption from the Horde, starting with the Shadow Council. As she was fleeing from Stormwind, Garona had been captured by the Horde, and she was tortured for information to figure out where the Shadow Council was hiding. She told them about their hideout in Blackrock Spire, and a large force of Horde soldiers, they stormed the smoldering volcano. None of the fire elementals or the dark iron dwarves stood in their way, while Ragnaros and the old gods, they kept their presence hidden, eager to see how this violent situation would play out. The Shadow Council warlocks, they could do little to save themselves from so many. Not even their fell powers were enough to hold them all off, but a few of them were able to survive. Amongst them was Cho'Gall. Without him, the Twilight's Hammer would fall to madness again, and Orgrim could not afford to lose their fighting force. He also swore his allegiance to their new war chief, claiming that he was manipulated into Gul'dan's service. Orgrim wasn't too sure if the ogre told the truth, but he also didn't really care. He needed their fighting power to protect the new land, and Cho'Gall had already proven his usefulness to him by introducing him to the Dark Iron Dwarves. The dwarves, secretly commanded by Ragnaros, they agreed to let the Horde claim Blackrock Spire as its new headquarters. Since the old gods, they were delighted to see what chaos the orcs would bring to the planet.
Your petty quarrels only make me stronger.
Orgrim also spared Garona. It was no secret that Gul'dan had been cruel to her, and her assassination of King Lane, that had been very helpful. She too swore allegiance to the Horde, and Orgrim gave the job of looking after her to one of his most trusted lieutenants, namely Eitrigg. So what about Gul'dan? Well, he eventually woke up from his coma to see that his world has changed. There was a new war chief, his Shadow Council was nearly annihilated, and Orgrim was just about ready to take his head. In order to save himself, Gul'dan convinced him to keep him around. Since he would have need of his magics, he would give them new warriors to help with the war, to help with their conquests. Reluctantly, Orgrim did give him a chance, and for a while, Gul'dan wondered on how to deliver on this promise. He needed to regain a foothold, regain some forces, so it was very important that the troops that he was going to make, that they would secretly pledge their loyalty to him, so his mind turned towards the fallen Shadow Council. The members were dead, but their spirits still remained intact. If Gul'dan could bring them back from the grave, he believed that they would be forever grateful to him. He would melt their spirits with the corpse of Stormwind's greatest knights. Since using orcs and ogres, that was out of the question. The Horde would never approve, so Gul'dan and Cho'Gall, they went to work. They conducted bloody ritual after bloody ritual, failed time and time again, until they finally succeeded. Gul'dan fused the spirit of his old ally Terangor to the corpse of a fallen Stormwind knight. Necromantic energy surged through the rotting body and raised it into undeath. The shambling, skeletal horror became known as Terangor Fiend, and he was the first of what Gul'dan would call the Death Knights. Despite his wishes, these Death Knights felt no real loyalty towards Gul'dan, nor did they feel it towards the Horde. All they cared about was their own survival. The Horde worked on building up their fleet and going forward with the conquest of the world, while the Alliance of Lordaeron, they rose up to fight against them. When the Horde eventually reached Kael'thas, the kingdom of the High Elves, they discovered that there was a magical barrier around the city, which kept their use of magic hidden from the outside world, while also preventing invaders from using magic of their own. This shield was being maintained by several runestones, which presented an opportunity for Gul'dan. He figured that if they would dismantle one of these runestones, then not only could they disrupt the barrier, they could also use it to strengthen the horde by turning it into something called an Altar of Storms. Cho'Gall's people, they had long ago created a ritual which allowed them to channel raw arcane magic into regular ogres, turning them into the highly intelligent two-headed ogre magi. Orgrim still did not trust Gul'dan, but the orc warlock had done nothing to set him off recently, and they could definitely use the additional power, so he allowed them to get to work, which would prove to be a very big mistake. Gul'dan had no love or loyalty for the horde, only for his own plans in mind, and the new ogre magi in secret pledged their loyalty to him. Now, all that he needed to do was waiting for the right time to make his move. Despite the magical barrier falling, Silvermoon and the High Elves, they were not defenseless, and they were able to cast a new shield around their city, powered by the Sunwell. Doomhammer was quickly losing his patience. Kael'thas had never been the main target, Lordran's capital was, and he wanted to move on with their forces. Gul'dan reassured him that they had found a new way around the Elf shield and would only need a few more days to get through. Orgrim gave Gul'dan some of the forces and 3 days to finish the job, while the rest of them, they marched on to Lordran's capital city. The perfect opportunity for Gul'dan to betray the horde as he took his forces, including Cho'Gall and his clan, to their true destiny, the tomb of Sargeras. The power contained within, they would be his, as they used their magic to raise it above the water. When Doomhammer found out about this betrayal, as you might imagine, he wasn't too happy. They had not been able yet to siege the capital city, and their reinforcement routes, they were now cut off. Gul'dan's betrayal meant that they had failed, and they had no other option than to retreat all the way back to Blackrock Mountain. The betrayal would not go unpunished though, as Orgrim sent out the Blacktooth Green clan, led by Dalren the main Black Hand, which you might remember from Upper Blackrock Spire, and they approached the island not long after the tomb had surfaced. Gul'dan, with a few of his followers, they quickly went in, leaving Cho'Gall and the Twilight Hammer behind to hold off their enemies. Inside, the Orc Warlock did not find the power that he so desired, only his demise, while Cho'Gall nearly lost his life. He survived only because his Twilight Hammer followers put him on a ship, while the winds carried the vessel west into uncharted waters. The war was lost by the Horde, as the Alliance was able to claim victory at Blackrock Mountain. Now they would come back for a second invasion, one in which eventually the Alliance, they decided to step through the Dark Portal and take the battle to the Horde. When they did, Garona of Orkhan wanted to join Khadgar in the expedition, even if it was only in secret. She'd been able to escape from Ettrick, but found that the Shadow Council, that they still had a dark presence in her mind, trying to bend her thoughts. Slowly, patiently, she fought her way back into control, and when she was confident that she could resist their orders, she had sought out Khadgar and explained to him what had happened, why she had betrayed them, and why she had murdered the king. The mage, he believed her. The evidence was right in front of him, as he could see their spellwork still woven through her thoughts, which meant that at least one member of the Shadow Council was still alive on Azeroth. Over several months, Khadgar secretly met with Garona and carefully unraveled the Shadow Council's hold. He was successful, and for the first time in her life, Garona was free. In gratitude, she offered to do whatever she could to hunt down the Shadow Council in Azeroth, and when she asked him to join them into Draenor, he convinced her to stay behind and hunt down the Council. Hunt them down and kill them all. She picked up Cho'Gall's trail as her journey took her to the mysterious lands of Kalimdor, while Khadgar and the Sons of Lothar, they were eventually forced to shut down the Dark Portal and stay behind on Draenor. Cho'Gall and the Twilight Hammer clan, they knew nothing of Draenor's fates. Even if they had, it didn't really matter. The wisdom of the old gods were calling to them. Cho'Gall and his followers sailed towards the continent of Kalimdor in search of the Dark Masters, eager to help them bring about the Hour of Twilight. This week, we're going to continue the storyline, but there is a little bit of a problem, since they've made a fair few changes with the Chronicles, especially when it comes to Garona, the spells placed on her mind, and her son Medan, the child that she had with Medivh. You might wonder, who the hell's Medan, since he never played a part in the game. He's been mentioned once in the short story, and only really exists within the comics. With the Chronicles, it seems like they've gone ahead and simply removed it from the story altogether, which on its own I'm quite happy with, but it does leave a gap as to what happened with characters connected to his story. Hopefully, Chronicles Volume 3 will explain the new story with Cho'Gall, maybe give an answer as to what happened with the Pale Orcs in Azeroth, maybe also use that book that they made to pass on the teachings. Who knows what they're going to do, but for now, all that we have is the story from the comics, so keep in mind that it's most likely going to change. Either way, within the comics, we find Cho'Gall in Silithus serving the old god C'Thun. Although we have defeated its physical manifestation during Classic World of Warcraft, the real old god still lies imprisoned beneath the world, and Cho'Gall wants to set his master free and bring chaos to the world. When the child of 3 realms becomes his light, the ancient power will be released. The earth will tremble, the seas will rise up in answer, and all will be madness. A new day will dawn, bringing with it chaos or peace. That's the prophecy connected to Medan, a prophecy which Cho'Gall wants to make a reality, with of course going for the chaos rather than the peace. This version of Corona still had those magical spells placed on her mind, and she didn't trust herself enough to raise her child. She handed him over to her old friend Meryl, while still keeping an eye on him from a distance. A good thing too, since the Twilight Hammer, they went on the attack. She was able to save him, not knowing that Medan was merely bait and they actually wanted her. The spells were activated, Corona was captured by Cho'Gall, who used their control to send it on a mission of disrupting the meeting between the Alliance and the Hordes. Peace between the factions, that did not work so well for the plans, so Corona was forced to attack them at Veremor. Varian recognized the murder of his father, and both sides were quick to throw accusations at one another, accused both factions of staging this assault. Those with a bit of a clearer head, they could easily see that races from both factions were attacking, but all the same, the peace negotiations, they were a failure, and the Lich King was on the move, so they went home to protect their lands. Medan had figured out that it was his mother who had tried to save him, and he showed up at Veremor to help her out, walking straight into the hands of the Twilight Hammer, while Corona was captured at Veremor. It was clear that someone was controlling her, and through agonizing spellwork, Jaina was able to uncover what was going on, that they had taken Medan to Ancrage. Valera Sanguinar, together with Meryl, who had also shown up at Veremor, they went out to save the child, who was not having the greatest time of his life right now, as he was hanging out with the corpse of Kafun, listening to the mad whispers of the Ancient One. The voice was trying to turn him to their side. Cho'Gall planned on placing similar spells on his mind as they done with Corona, but before they had a chance, Valera and Meryl showed up. The Blood Elf confronts the Ogre, buying them time to make a portal to get out of there, but she doesn't stand a chance against the might coursing through Cho'Gall. She did have a demon living inside of her, the demon Kafranatir, who was roaring to be let out and fight. Cho'Gall could hear the puny demon inside of her call out, taunted her to let him play, and despite a better judgment, she did. Not even Kafranatir was strong enough to defeat Cho'Gall, but it did buy them enough time to get away from there, to which Meryl, he offered himself as a host for the demon. The old god Kafun is not pleased with Cho'Gall. He has failed him, and punishment is in order. Agony, such as Cho'Gall did not know existed. The more power that he wields, the more disfigured the ogre becomes, while Medan, he's proven to be far too stubborn to control. But by playing it right, killing him will discharge his energy and burst the bonds that imprison and master, as surely as if the boy had released the power himself. It will free their master to unleash chaos onto the world, and the ancient word of prophecy would be fulfilled. Cho'Gall then goes about sending a faceless one to Veremor, as well as weakening the barrier between Azeroth and the elemental plane, pushing the elements to fight for their master. All of the attacks, they're repelled, and Medan eventually learns more about where he comes from, that his father was the Guardian Medivh, and he learns how to wield the light, the arcane, the elements, pretty much any power under the sun, and he's even able to combine them all together. They even bring the Council of Tirisfal back to empower him and make him the new Guardian. Atiesh, the great staff of the Guardian, that's restored in his hands, and in the final confrontation with Cho'Gall, with all of their gathered might combined, they are able to stop his plans of setting Kafun free. It even seems like Cho'Gall is dead, but like what happened at the Tomb of Sargeras, he was able to survive. Still, a hard-earned victory, while the war against the Twilight Hammer, that's not over quite yet. Meryl and Corona, they decide to hunt them down, while Medan, he goes off to train some more, and then disappears from the story. Like I mentioned earlier, these events will probably be changed with the upcoming chronicles, and we'll get a new story with Corona and Cho'Gall, but for now, this is all we have. One thing that does ring true in both versions is Cho'Gall serving the Void and the Old Gods, believing in the prophecy of the Hour of Twilight. With the Cataclysm, the Black Dragon Deathwing, he shook the world to its core and changed it forever.
And all will burn beneath the shadow of my wings.
With the pre-event, the Elemental Unrest, we saw Cho'Gall, who naturally joined the fun of all of this. His image appeared around Azeroth to speak with the cultists of his Doomsday cult, while he also commanded Elemental Lieutenants to attack Horde and Alliance capital cities. He personally complimented Hydromancer Kurrafa on empowering Gazrilla, the adored pet of the Old Gods, while also having a conversation with Crown Princess Teradres, whose beauty you might remember from Maraudon. Now Deathwing, he didn't just come out to give the world a makeover, he was working for the Old Gods to bring about the Hour of Twilight, the foundation on which the Twilight Hammer is founded. Unlike the Pale, who saw it as a time in which shadow would envelop the entire universe and snuff out all life in existence, back then it was described as the moment in which the Old Gods would break out of their prisons and rule the world once more, taking out all life on Azeroth. You could argue that by breaking out of the prisons, they would be able to complete the corruption of the Titan spirit inside the planet, by which they then would snuff out all life in the universe. Either way, that was their mission, and for it, definitely recruited some powerful allies to get the job done. There was, for example, Ragnaros the Fire Lord and Alakir the Wind Lord. They joined him, as well as Cho'Gall and the Twilight's Hammer, who we first encounter in Feralis. The Gorduni Ogres, they've got their hands on a Gorduni orb. Now, there's no way that the Gorduni made these themselves. Someone has to be supplying them. Someone is giving them gifts of power, and we need to find out who it is. So we capture a Gordok ogre, who, after a bit of motivating, he spills the beans and informs us that it's Cho'Gall and the Twilight's Hammer. They've been busy recruiting the ogres at Dire Maul, as well as gaining access to the remnants of Eldrafalas, full of forbidden power.
Behold! The world you see before you has been judged. Fire, water, earth, air! All shall perish before the elements.
Burn and drown and crush and suffocate.
Join us and embrace the inevitable end.
The Master's power calls.
You will be reborn, stronger than flesh.
Strength beyond form, power in the infinite.
Swear your allegiance to me.
The Master wants, he sees and wants and hungers.
And you will be remade in my image.
Wait! Infidel! A heathen among us!
An intruder! You! Show yourselves, my ogres. Slay this insect.
Blood for the Master! Blood and suffering!
We fight with Cho'Gall's disciples, Moltar the Burning and Gluck the Quenched, Fire and Water, but they're no match for us, so Cho'Gall decides to come down himself. Notice, by the way, how they have the same scar on the chest as Cho'Gall has, a scar that he obtained from fighting at the tomb, which I guess they thought looked really cool and wanted one as well.
Enough! I'll stain my hands with your blood!
Murder! Murder!
Placed in a block of ice, we're completely helpless and unable to stop Cho'Gall from casting his flaming pillar of doom. But thankfully, Chandris Feathermoon on the Alliance side, or Orhan Ogreblade for the Horde, they show up to save our lives. Together, we bring down Durk the Earthmaster and Glak the Wind Reaver, forcing Cho'Gall to retreat.
Enjoy your hollow victory, insects!
The darkness comes!
May it console you as your world rots.
Ogres only understand strength, and we have humiliated Cho'Gall right in front of them, so he will not be finding any followers here. A little ogre dance to celebrate, but the war against Cho'Gall and the Twilight's Hammer, that continued within the Twilight Highlands. While playing on the Horde side, this is where we find Garona Half-Orcan again, who's on the hunt for Cho'Gall. She traveled all this way to speak with the famed seer of the Dragon Maw, but she's worthless, all riddles and rhyme. Maybe we can be more helpful, as we're sent out to pick up an Eye of Twilight, which we can use to peer into the very heart of Cho'Gall's lair. After proving our worth to the Eye, a price paid by blood by slaying a whole bunch of the Shaman of the Black, we get to see what the Eye is able to see, and we check in on Cho'Gall.
We have confirmed the Horde presence at Dragon Maw Port, Master. They are now in league.
This changes nothing.
Nothing changes. Crush them! Crush!
One of our agents in Ulgramar.
City engulfed in stone and sand, we see it! The Eye sees into his heart!
Bring me the Eye.
Our agents have been outed and killed, Master. Blaspheme! Blaspheme, disgust, hate!
No matter. Where one eye closes, another opens.
The Master sees all! The Master knows all!
We will know our enemies' hearts, for they are weak. The Eye, now. The shadow of the Master covers this world.
Darkness! All darkness!
Our enemies fight one another across the Highland. Fools.
Blood!
Wait! There is another. A mortal dares peer into the Eye.
Brave little plaything!
I see you, little one. You want to see what the Eye sees, do you?
Show it all!
Behold the chaos to come.
Madness, bliss!
Do you like what you see, mortal?
The Master sees you! He sees! He sees! He wants! He wants and wants and wants!
During the introduction quest for the Twilight Highlands, we uncovered Twilight infiltrators in both Orgrimmar and Stormwind, but both of them were quickly taken care of without any major losses, and the counterattack into the Highlands that could kick off. The Alliance, they work on turning the local Wildhammer dwarves into their allies, while the Horde, they work with the Dragonmaw clan, placing Warlord Zayla as their leader.
My scouts learned all about this one. Warlord Zayla.
A story for another day, Varian. For now, let's focus on Cho'Gall. Besides orcs and dwarves, we also joined the Earthen Ring in taking on Izorath, a massive servant of the old gods. Now, not an actual old god, but one powerful enough to nearly devour us. In the end, we're able to put the BC down, and we even earned the aid of the Red Dragonflight by assisting them in confronting Deathwing and securing the entrance into Grim Batol. Now, as you can tell, a lot of things go on in the Twilight Highlands, but for Cho'Gall, we make our way to the Twilight Gates, where with our forces gathered, we're ready to assault the main stronghold. Bombs are dropped in from the sky, major enemies are distracted so our troops can move further in, while we also try to escort some Kor'kron troops to support Garona. Now for the Alliance, you party with Matthias Shaw, but I feel like this storyline that is more appropriate for Garona. Either way, we try to get some reinforcements inside, but Cho'Gall, he doesn't really appreciate enemy troops sneaking around.
Horde scum! I was once like you.
Our old master, small and hungry.
You cling to your mortal shells.
Bags of blood and bone and tears.
Trying to deny your insignificance.
Finish it! Finish them all!
The Kor'kron reinforcements, they're all dead, but thankfully they did tell us where to find Garona at the start of the mission, and Cho'Gall, he doesn't even really notice us. We help out Garona with taking out some of the assassins that are sent after her, we kill a whole bunch of the Twilight Hammer in the Citadel, but our main objective is stopping them from creating an ultimate weapon. It's an artifact, supposedly being created with the powers of an old god, but her investigation, that's hit a dead end. She does know that there was a group of Wildhammer smiths that were captured here and then drowned in the lake when they were done with their services. We need some help to figure out more, so we talk to Earthcaller Yiva, who sends us the Countess Varral, the ancient spirit of the lake. She will help us if we take out her arch-nemesis Lord Cannon, who was foolish enough to throw his allegiance to the Twilight Hammer, and after doing so, she gives us Water of Life, which we can then use on the corpse of the drowned dwarf. The spirit of Forge Master Finlay, he lets us know that they were working on a very special project, an artifact for Cho'Gall. They were to be rewarded for the best work they'd ever done, and they were, with being drowned in the lake. The weapon that we seek, the weapon imbued with the power of an old god, that is called the Hammer of Twilight. A hammer which Garona finds out is being kept at the altar of Twilight.
Back, vermin!
Insects, weak and small!
Look, mortal, upon the instrument of your undoing.
The hammer! Hand of the gods below!
Forged of molten blood.
Gift of the master! His gift!
Shaped upon the last altar of storm. The Hammer of Twilight!
The Hammer of Twilight!
Commissioned by the aspect of death. It is the breaker of worlds. It is not yours to wield.
Kill the intruders! Kill them all!
What Deathwing has set in motion.
No man can stop!
No man! Least of all you wretches!
Show them their end!
Skull Crusher the Mountain, he smacks us away. We wake up with quite a headache, but we need to get up and get back into the fight. Together with our forces, we confront Cho'Gall's Chosen, who's mighty indeed. But we can use the altar to our benefit. We can harness the power of the elements themselves, shielding us, empowering us, as long as we avoid the Shadow Ones, since they really hurt. With the Grand defeated, our adventure in the Twilight Highlands, that ends, but our fight with Cho'Gall, that has only just begun. He has the Hammer of Twilight in his possession, and sadly, Garona didn't join us into the Bastion of Twilight, but all the same, that is where our journey takes us next.
Brothers of the Hammer! To me!
Their will is still their own!
The unbelievers still stand! Destroy them!
Crush their bodies! Crush their will!
The Bastion of Twilight stands as a dark symbol of the old god's burgeoning power on Azeroth. Various branches of the Twilight Hammer dwell deep beneath the towering form, considered the cult's foremost command center, along with their twisted leader Cho'Gall. There, he and his servants conspire to bring the old god's apocalyptic visions to fruition by bleeding Azeroth of all sanity, hope, and life. We fight our way through many of the Twilight Hammer's most powerful troops, and of course there are bosses to stand in our way, bosses we have to face before we can go to Cho'Gall. First, there's Kael'thas the Wormbreaker, an Ettin who's imbued with unnatural power and stamina by Cho'Gall. He captures dragons for use as fodder in the Twilight Hammer rituals. To this end, he has enslaved the behemoth Proto-Dragon to aid him in hunting down his winged prey. Each week, we had 3 of the 5 captured dragonkin to help us out for a bit, until they were mind controlled back into the service, but it did mix up the fight every single week. After Kael'thas, we have Trevelyan and Valiona, Twilight Dragons who were magically aged into adults. They were supposed to be the paragons amongst the new clutch of Twilight Dragons, leading their brood into scouting all life of the planet. Instead, they just wasted incredible powers bickering and fighting with each other, leaving us the opportunity to take care of them.
Come closer, closer. Let us see your faces. All will be humbled before his power.
Next up is the Ascended Council, the most powerful Twilight Hammer cultists twisted into elemental beings. They have forgotten their existence as mere mortals, and from their wicked sanctum, they oversee the selection of new Ascension candidates. After tackling them in pairs of 2, they stun us and fuse into one mighty being, combining their strengths, but not even that is enough to take us out. Which leads into the throne of the apocalypse, with the mighty Cho'Gall just chilling there. The Hammer of Twilight is in his hands, ready to take us on.
Foolish mortals!
Usurpers' children!
Nothing you have done has...
Spawn of a lesser god!
I am trying to speak here.
Words, words, words! The Master wants murder!
All falls to chaos. All will be destroyed.
Chaos, chaos!
Your work here today changes nothing.
Chaos, chaos! All things end!
No mortal may see what you have and live. Your end has come!
We take out the Faceless Guardians and some of the most powerful members of the Twilight Hammer, clearing the room for our final confrontation.
Enough!
To his will, all flesh succumbs. From his kingdom, chaos comes!
Yes, what he said.
Shadow and fire elementals are summoned by the two-headed ogre, as well as corrupting adherents from nearby portals. All the while, throughout the fight, the will of the old gods is trying to corrupt us, turn us against our allies, or even, at 100% corruption, it will fully transform us into a Faceless One. At 25% health, one head takes over from the other, one who has fully given himself to the might of the old gods, while the other one wasn't quite ready yet.
Brother, it cannot be.
Destiny has come!
My strength!
Too proud, he speaks in blood! Listen!
My...
It is for his glory we serve!
What is happening?
Gone is the dawn. Come, shades of twilight. Come, madness. Come, havoc. Come, infinite night!
At this point, the fight becomes a pure DPS race. Get him down, while darkened creations, tentacles from the floor, they assault us. But in the end, despite the might of the old gods and the Hammer of Twilight, Cho'Gall is still defeated.
Brother, we are shattered. Let her finish them.
The Master does not want them near her. Brother! The Master sees!
On heroic modes, we discover that Cho'Gall was not the final boss. There's actually more plans going on here as we fall down into Sinestra's lair.
We were fools to entrust an imbecile like Cho'Gall with such a sacred duty. I will deal with you intruders myself!
Lady Sinestra, Deathwing's consort, she's been resurrected and are working hard on breeding new Twilight Dragons. But this is where the story of our Cho'Gall ends. An ogre hungry for power who found his way to the Fel and eventually to the Void, dedicating his life to serving the Old Ones and bringing about the Hour of Twilight. Azeroth rose up against their plans and were even able to defeat Deathwing, but his teachings still live on to this day. It's doubtful that the Twilight Hammer clan or their cult will ever truly go away, not as long as the power of the Void Void Lords as they still resonate through the universe. Now there is one more story to tell, the story of alternate Cho'Gall, which we encountered during Warlords of Draenor. Our Garrosh went back in time, around the time of the formation of the Horde, the time where our Cho'Gall story began, to an alternate reality where he informed Gromash of Gul'dan's true plans with the orcs, the corruption of the Legion, eager to sell his people into slavery to gain his power. With the warning, they're able to prevent that, and here Gul'dan has already formed his Shadow Council. They even have Garona half-Orcan working as an assassin, yet all the same, they're taken by the orcs and they're used to fuel the Dark Portal. Garrosh has convinced them not to sign up with the Legion, but he did push them towards invading our Azeroth. The Iron Horde, they came in, Azeroth pushed them back, and as we stepped through the Dark Portal to take the battle to the Iron Horde, we had to quickly make a decision, and it was decided to set Gul'dan and his allies free to shut down the portal. This left us stranded on alternate Draenor, forced to dismantle the Iron Horde, while Gul'dan, he was free to pursue his own plans.
We will meet again.
In Frostfire Ridge, we team up with Khadgar and we help out the local orcs, who are dealing with massive quakes caused by Shul-Halat. Perhaps those who disturbed the Great Worm are the same ones who Khadgar's trying to track down, and as we fly into the Sleeper's Lair, we discover what's going on.
Do you feel the power they're drawing on? We should subjugate these pale orcs.
An intruder! Let's leave!
It's the Pale Orcs, who already have found a way to the Void with the Naru-Kur. They were the ones disturbing the Sleeper, and Cho'Gall is very interested in what they can do. After putting down the Big Worm, we collect an all-seeing ring from Uxor the Necrophurge, which allows us to spy on the Shadow Council and figure out what mission Gul'dan has for Cho'Gall.
Cho'Gall, I'm sending you to Nagrand. You'll subjugate the fallen Naru inside our Shogun. I will crush it!
The Pale are the key!
All I require is its limitless power.
Notice, by the way, how the model of Cho'Gall is different to the one that showed up in the Sleeper's Cave. Perhaps they're actually planning to give it a unique model, since this one is already quite disfigured and also bears the scars which he got from fighting at the tomb. All the same, Cho'Gall is sent to Nagrand to subjugate Kur and gain its powerful Gul'dan. But as we all know, Cho'Gall was never loyal to Gul'dan.
Cho'Gall, I sent you here to enslave this thing. Where is my power, ogre? Your power?
It's my power!
You will obey, disciple. Hand over its reins. I think not.
We're done taking orders from you.
We've learned much from Quore.
We're writing a book.
You're insane. Run away, old man!
Soon, Heimel will burn. Then, the world.
With the powers of the Void under his command, Cho'Gall is ready to turn his back on Gul'dan and focus on his own plans. He sets his eyes on Heimel, which I imagine means that the origin story of our Cho'Gall being kicked out of Heimel and all that also goes for this alternate version. The Pale and Nagrand, they're working on enslaving the elements, and they've even been able to take control of Gordog, the great element fury of Earth. We have to stop Cho'Gall from destroying the Naru, so our quest takes us through the caves of the Pale. We free the elements, take care of a whole bunch of the orcs, and we even take out Gordog. Sadly, it was too late to do anything for Kur. Cho'Gall had already pushed the Naru so far that it turned into a Void Lord, and our only option was to destroy it. After that, we didn't see much of Cho'Gall until the Alliance and Horde were ready to take on Heimel to put a stop to the Ogre threats who had allied themselves with the Iron Horde. As we went in, we saw Cho'Gall hanging out in his cage, laughing at us as we were forced to fight in the arena for the amusement of the Ogres. Our victory was the perfect opportunity for Cho'Gall and the Pale to strike.
And that's 100. Cho'Gall? You sought to imprison us, Margok?
You could never control us!
Guards, stop him! Destroy them all! Raze this city to the ground!
The stones will be ours! all shall fall to darkness.
Seal the gates! Protect the palace! Heimall will never fall to the likes of you!
The Pale strike out at the ogres and orcs, while the powers of the void are raining down upon Heimall. Not really an advantage for us, as both sides would love to see us dead, but step by step, boss by boss, we're able to fight our way to the throne of the Imperator, where we find Morgok channeling the powers of the stones. You might wonder, what's the deal with these stones? But sadly, that's not really been explained, a curse that happened a lot with the story in Warlords. It's possible that they have some Titan origin, since Agramar he did have some influence on the formation of the planets, but no real details are given. They are powerful, apparently the source of power for Sorcerer Kings for generations, power which Cho'Gall desires. On Mythic only, as Morgok is nearly defeated, he shows up again to steal the kill.
I command the arcane! You know nothing of the power you meddle with, Morgok!
It calls to us! We know its power will be ours!
Cho'Gall! Traitorous scum! I knew you were behind this! Your reign has come to an end! The infinite night begins!
Darkness, come!
I am king! We have waited long for this moment. The true power of the stones will be realized at last.
None shall survive. We shall be the unmaking. Destroy them. Wash over this world.
Cho'Gall unleashes the power of the stones and he channels it into Morgok, ending the Sorcerer King's life. He believes they have the power to unlock the true might of the stones, which might suggest a connection to the void, but again, who really knows? The darkness washes over us as Cho'Gall unleashes his might. Waves of the Pale try to bring us down, but in the end, like our Cho'Gall, the ogre still falls.
Come. You can never escape.
Throughout the fight, Cho'Gall warned us that darkness would swallow the world and all would hear his call. The he that he mentioned in his final words never really showed up during Warlords, unless he was talking about our commands, but that doesn't really make sense, considering that he stepped away from Gul'dan and the Legion and he started to focus on the void. We can only wonder what more they were planning to do with this amazing expansion. But here ends the story of alternate Cho'Gall. Cho'Gall is so popular that he has even been taken over into other games. Within Hearthstone, he's been turned into a legendary warlock card, while he also battles within the Nexus, as friends can team up to control the two-headed ogre, one of the heroes that I really enjoy to play.
The pathetic wretches of this new realm already fear me.
They should. So many souls for me to harvest.
And I shall begin with theirs. This Nexus, all its power, it will be mine!
Those who oppose me invite their own demise.
If the two of us have learned anything fighting fools like these before, it's that
when we work as one, none can stand against us.
We are Cho'Gall! We will rule the Nexus!
Or destroy it!
Lei-Shen, he wasn't always known as the Thunder King. Once he was just a Mogu, a Titan forged, created by the Titan Keepers. This all goes back to the days of the origins of Azeroth, where the Pantheon, they found a planet corrupted by the old gods. Inside of it slumbered one of their kin, a Titan spirit, which the Pantheon had been desperately searching for. The corruption of the old gods, it was quite serious though. Their goal is to corrupt one of these titans and devour all of existence. The Titan Sargeras, he found out about these plans, set on a journey to wipe out all corruption that he could find. While the rest of the titans, they did not agree with that plan. There were already so few of them There had to be a better way, so they set to work to save this Titan spirit from the old gods' corruption. Now their colossal might, it could easily overpower the old gods and rip them out of the surface, as they did with the old god Y'Shaarj, but doing so caused far too much damage to the world, to that spirit inside, defeating the purpose of trying to save it. So instead, they decided to create Titan Keepers to fight their war for them. Keepers like Loken, Tyr, Odin and Ra, and in turn, these keepers, they created their Titan Forge to help them battle the old gods, and later on, bring order to the world. Titan Forged like the Vrykul, Tol'vir, Irvin and the Mogu. Their forces combined were able to win the war over the Black Empire, imprison the old gods, and patch up the wound which was left behind by ripping out Y'Shaarj. Several Titan facilities, they have been uncovered over the years. In the north near Ulduar, we can find the Forge of Wills, which not only helped the Titan spirit inside of the planet grow, it also allowed them to make more of their Titan Forged. Then in the south, near Ahn'Qiraj, there's the Forge of Origination, which would not only help the Titan spirit grow, it also acts as a failsafe device. In the event that Azeroth's flora and fauna it succumbed to corruption, the incredible energies stored inside this great machine, it could be unleashed to eradicate all life on the world, which then allowed it to start anew. On his journey, Keeper Ra and his Titan Forged, they came across bits and pieces of Y'Shaarj that had fallen back onto the world. The biggest was his heart, and rather than destroy it, Ra and the others, they decided to keep it instead, build a subterranean vault to contain it and neutralize its evil. Studying the heart, it could help them understand the nature of the old gods and the other void creatures. It was the Mogu that were charged with watching over this vault. They would guard and care for the surrounding land as well, while the Tol'vir and the Nubusaf, they were charged with guarding the Forge of Origination, and the remaining forces, they were told to guard Kafun in Silithus. With the job complete, the Titans left Azeroth behind in the hands of the Keepers, left the world to do its thing. In time, perhaps that Titan spirit, it would actually wake up. They done all that they could, and set off to find more of their kind. On a stormy day, Ra and his Mogu followers ascended a colossal mountain to see the Titans off. The legends say that the High Keeper slammed his weapon, the Fist of Raden, against a shield called the High Keeper's Ward, and the elements answered to his will. The rain ceased, and the clouds parted. The mountain at their feet rose higher, and lightning and fire illuminated the skies, so that Ra and his followers could better glimpse the Titans. Lastly, the winds howled a sorrowful farewell. Yet, when the Titans ran into Sargeras again, they were unable to change his mind. He believed that purging the corruption, that was the only solution. His Burning Legion was formed to help him with this plan, and a heated argument between the Titans, it ended with Sargeras striking them down. Their spirits did not die though. Instead, they used their powers to protect themselves, launch into the Great Dark, towards the world of Azeroth and their Keepers. There, the depleted spirits slammed into their Keepers, who were immediately overwhelmed as the Titan powers flared in their minds. Puzzled and confused, they started to call out to the beloved creators for answers, but they received no reply. The deep silence, it troubled the Keepers, which caused them to fall into a long period of confusion and unease. Something that the old god Yogg-Saron at Ulduar, he took great advantage of. He played his cards in such a way that Keeper Loken fell under his corruption. Together, they worked on weakening the bonds that kept Yogg-Saron imprisoned, things like the Curse of Flesh, as well as taking out the other Keepers. Meanwhile, Keeper Ra also felt this influx of a Titan spirit inside of his body. But unlike the others, he actually figured out what was going on. The Pantheon, their creators had fallen. All that was left was this last bit inside of him. He extracted the lingering power of Aman'Fu from himself, and carefully stored it in a mountain vault near what would become known as the Veil of Eternal Blossoms. He then retreated into the catacombs beneath the land to meditate on what he had learned. Now this didn't suddenly stop life on Azeroth, of course. It kept on growing and evolving. Over the millennia that followed, his loyal Mogu, they maintained their vigil over the Veil of Eternal Blossoms, bravely fighting off any threats that might try to take the area, like the Mented and their swarms. Their faith that the High Keeper would one day return to them, it endured through century after century of hardships. Yet that faith, it vanished once the Curse of Flesh, it manifested within the Mogu ranks. It had traveled all the way from Ulduar to the Veil, and this curse, it literally turned the Titan Forged into fleshy beings. It weakened them and made them more vulnerable to the old god's corruption. For the first time, the Mogu faced mortality. Fear and uncertainty, it took root in their hearts. Small disagreements spiraled into conflict, violence and bloodshed. Packs of the Mogu started to band together. Clans and warlords, they emerged by the score and engaged in brutal power struggles with their own kinds. Those who triumphed were quickly toppled by their rivals. Through it all, their culture and language, even their sense of purpose and identity, it all began to change. Only their most basic instincts prevented total annihilation. The threats of the Mantids were one of the few things that had the Mogu band together, but once the swarm was defeated, hostilities would surface again, and the cycle continued. And amongst the turmoil of these Mogu wars, a new leader would rise up to challenge their beliefs, their whole way of life.
The Thunder King comes. The Thunder King comes.
This introduction brings us to Lei-Shen, a descendant of a minor warlord who grew up in a Mogu tribe together with Sparkmancer Wu. The two Mogu grew as close as brothers. As children, they played, quarreled, and challenged one another. It is said that this early rivalry was instrumental in developing Lei-Shen's thirst for power. The future Thunder King saw his father betrayed and murdered, and their clansmen, they quickly found refuge in other clans. Only a few of them, the loyalist armsmen, refused to leave Lei-Shen's side. And this Mogu, he was quite special, as he looked at the way of life, and he saw it as a betrayal of the Mogu's potential. There had to be more than just this cycle of warfare, just fighting amongst each other. There had to be a plan to all of it, a master purpose to explain all their suffering. He set out to find some answers, to find their long-absent High Keeper Ra, or Raden as the Mogu now called them, Raden in the new language. Some of their people didn't even believe that Raden was still out there, but that didn't stop Lei-Shen from trying. After years of searching, he located the entrance to the hidden vaults beneath the lands north of the Veil, sacred chambers, where the High Keeper, he was just sitting quietly in the stillness beneath the earth. Raden showed no reaction to the young Mogu's intrusion. The High Keeper said nothing at all, even as Lei-Shen began to ask him the questions about the Mogu's true purpose. Days and then weeks passed by, and Lei-Shen grew frustrated with his master's silence. Finally, the Mogu realized that Ra, he was not contemplating some subtle plan, was not engrossed in the work of the Titans. The High Keeper had simply given up. The suffering of the Mogu had been the result of an absentee master, and nothing more. Furious, he unleashed on Ra, accusing him of abandoning the Titans and their purpose. These harsh words, they finally roused the High Keeper, as Ra decided to take Lei-Shen to the nearby Thundering Mountain, where unending storms roared and split the heavens. No Mogu had dared scale its slope before, for the mountain was believed to be a forbidden place. Inside a massive ordnance vault, Raden then summoned that lingering power of Aman'Thul, and showed Lei-Shen the answers that he wanted. The Titans of the Pantheon were dead, murdered by one of their own. Their final hope was the world of Azeroth itself, but it was already infected with creatures of the void. Now Ra, he had assumed that this knowledge would shatter Lei-Shen's soul as it had his own, but the Mogu, he had other plans in mind. If his master had no interest in continuing the Titan's purpose, then he would do it himself. Without warning, he struck out and incapacitated Raden. Lei-Shen then bound the mighty being in enchanted iron bands, stole not only Raden's incredible powers, but also the contained powers of Aman'Thul. In that moment, the Thunder King was born, imprisoning Raden before returning to his people. With the powers of the Creator, it was time to unify the Mogu, have them stop fighting each other, and focus once more on the glorious purpose bestowed upon them by the Titans. Or at least that was Lei-Shen thought, but really it was much closer to what he believed to be their purpose.
The Mogu tell a legend about Lei-Shen, the Thunder King. It is said that he tore out the very heart of the Mogu god. And from that hateful act, he gained power over wind and storm. His followers fell to their knees before him. "We will call you the Lightning King," they said. But Lei-Shen did not agree. "Lightning strikes in an instant and is over in a flash," he said. "But Thunder proclaims the coming of the storm. Thunder quakes the skies long before the lightning strikes, and thunder echoes in the hills long after lightning's power is spent. It is thunder that sends animals cowering and fills the hearts of peasants with dread. Let thunder be my herald, so that my power is felt throughout the land. I will be the Thunder King."
Initially, most of the Mogu, they rallied to him out of fear, but his miracles soon inspired devotion. The Thunder King had mastered the enchanted tools of the Keepers. One of these was the engine of Nalashka, a powerful device that Lei-Shen had discovered beneath the land, north of the Veil. Using this extraordinary machine, the Mogu began shaping flesh and stone into brand new living creatures. They even found a way to reverse that curse of flesh. Under Lei-Shen, a period of prosperity and brutality, it gripped the Veil. For the Mogu, it was the beginning of a glorious new empire. Yet for the region's other races, it marked the start of an age of tyranny. Since their history with the curse of flesh, it meant that Lei-Shen, he saw any beings of flesh, any mortals of the world as beneath them. Over time, the land of the Mogu, it saw creatures like the Jinyu, the Hosen, the Yongle, and the Pandaren occupy the area. The Pandaren were especially intelligent, and their love for peace, it had them grow close to the wild gods of the land, namely Suen the White Tiger, Julan the Jade Serpent, Chi-Ji the Red Crane, and Yao Zhao the Black Ox. They called them the August Celestials, so when Lei-Shen's war raged across the land, the Pandaren, they fled to Kunlai Summit for the protection of the White Tiger. In response, Lei-Shen brought his armies to the foothills, and he challenged Suen to a duel that would decide the fate of the Pandaren. Suen accepted, and for many days, the great battle between the White Tiger and the Thunder King, it shook the skies over Kunlai. In the end, our poor wild god could not match Lei-Shen's stolen Titan powers. He was chained near the peak of the mountain, forced to watch as the Mogu bound the Pandaren to slavery. The other Celestials also tried to help the Pandaren, but again, the might of the Thunder King, it proved to be far too much to handle. So it was that Lei-Shen, he forbade the Pandaren from worshipping the Celestials. Most of them lost all of their ties to the wild gods, but some amongst them, some of the fearless slaves, they carried on the teachings of the Celestials in secret. On top of that, they were also not allowed to pick up arms of any kind, which would eventually result in the teachings of the monk, and they had to speak the language of the Mogu. To disobey was to be killed in slow and brutal fashion. The Mogu forged their greatest palaces and monuments with the blood and sweat of their subjugated races. Soon, the Empire boasted a unified language, an established system of weights and measurements, and the first set of written laws in Azeroth to make sure that all knew the Mogu were above all other creatures. The slaves were also turned into soldiers. The hardest labor, it fell on their shoulders, like the creation of the Serpent Spine to keep the Mentit out of their lands. Lei-Shen was fully aware that the Mentit, with all their strength, they would never bow to his authority. He commanded his slaves to construct the Serpent Spine, a magnificent wall that spanned the length of the Empire. It took many generations to build, but Lei-Shen knew that fear would motivate his subjects. The fear of the Mentit, it moved mountains, raised armies, secured his empire, and built him this wall. And when existing slaves perished or proved inefficient, Lei-Shen, he shaped new ones with the power of the engine of Nalashka. You might remember exploring the cave with Vol'jin, where he announced that this was some bad voodoo. They shaped creatures like the Grummels or the Saurok. Another thing that was added to the arsenal were the Fists of Raden and the High Keeper's wards. Lei-Shen had taken them with him when he betrayed Raden, yet for all his might, he could not harness the energies of the artifacts. His inability to do so, it infuriated him. After all, Lei-Shen had conquered the Mogu and forced them into an empire. He had defeated Ra. How could two artifacts defy his will? But defy him they did. The shield and the fist weapon were simply too much even for the Thunder King to control. Every time he tried to use the artifacts, elemental energies they lashed out of Lei-Shen and overwhelmed him. Despite these repeated failures, Lei-Shen did not give up. One way or another, he would harness the power of these ancient weapons. Eventually, he decided to give them to a gifted blacksmith, Forge Master Deng. The Thunder King ordered him to unlock the artifact secrets, but he also warned the artisan not to harness their power for himself, or he would suffer grave consequences. Deng promised Lei-Shen that he would follow his commands, but secretly, he plotted to disobey his master. The blacksmith reasoned that if he could find a way to use the weapon and the shield, something that the Thunder King had been unable to do so, he could take control over the Mogu Empire himself. While Deng was tampering with the Fist of Raden, a bolt of lightning tore down from the sky and slammed into him. Thankfully for him, the artifact absorbed most of the energy, which saved his life, but Deng did not escape unharmed. The lightning left him forever disfigured. Knowing that wielding them was not going to be an option, he then started experimenting, eventually finding a purpose for the artifacts. He started to use them to power an immense engine known as the Thunder Forge. This machine, it churned day and night, creating armaments of exceptional quality for the Mogu military. Lei-Shen was very pleased by the work, and he ordered Deng to personally craft him weapons and armor that would put all others to shame. The blacksmith toiled over the Thunder Forge to satisfy his master. His labors gave rise to what would be his 3 greatest creations: a massive spear, a battle axe, and a mighty helm. His helm would become so well known that his enemies would flee at the mere sight of it, and his spear, it murdered thousands of innocents. It is said that the Thunder King could throw his axe with brutal accuracy, and when it hits its targets, it made a sound like crashing thunder. Under the leadership of Lei-Shen, the Mogu Empire and power, it vastly grew in scope. It started to draw the attention from other civilizations in Azeroth, like the Zandalari. They too had quite an empire to boast about, and they figured that the Mogu would make for some amazing allies. They might hold the power of this world, but the trolls held the knowledge of the land. The 2 empires would make each other great, teach each other their secrets. Once they were allied, nothing in Azeroth would dare oppose them, and Lei-Shen was intrigued by the offer, even decided to go along with it. The Zandalari were trained in the ways of arcane magic, promised quite a bit of land in the Vale, and in exchange they shared the knowledge of the land. Unknown to all of their people was that both leaders were actually plotting to betray one another, using them for what they needed and then toss them to the sides. But their allegiance, it proved to be so beneficial for both sides that the whole betrayal thing, it never really came to be. In fact, Lei-Shen even confided in the Zandalari. He had come up with a way that, in case he would die, his spirit could be revived. Knowing that the rest of his people, they were power-hungry bastards. He couldn't exactly trust the Mogu to do it, so the secret of his resurrection, it was passed on to the Zandalari. Meanwhile, over at Uldum, the Tolver, they performed their duties, guarded the area, waiting patiently for word from High Keeper Ra or his Mogu servants. They had no idea what Lei-Shen had done. So when they were summoned to the Vale, they were stunned to see exactly how advanced their Mogu cousins had become. They'd even managed to reverse the curse of flesh, something that the Tolver also had to deal with. And while the brutal enslavement of the land, it shocked them, they didn't take action. Their main concern was the protection of the machineries in Uldum, and the Thunder King agreed. In his mind, he was still working in line with the plans of the Keepers, so bringing Uldum and their machines into his empire, it was the only logical way to go. With his stolen powers, the engine of Nalashka, and the Forge of Origination under his command, they could remake all of Azeroth as they saw fit, but that's not how the Tolver saw it. They were outraged, hearing what Lei-Shen had done to the Keeper. The Thunder King, he might offer them a high position within his empire, but that didn't matter to them. Their loyalty and love for Ra, it was unquestionable, so they stormed out of the empire, vowing to never serve a traitor. Good enough for Lei-Shen. If they weren't going to sign up willingly, then he would take Uldum by force. The Tolver, they could never stand against the might of his armies, against the might of the Thunder King. He was so sure of his victory that he decided to invite the Zandalari to accompany him to witness what he claimed would be the Mogu Empire's greatest victory yet. Those that he had trusted to hold his secret to his resurrection, they ventured with him into the lush jungles of Uldum, imagining themselves unlocking the secrets of immortality. Uldum at the time was quite a little paradise, teeming with undiscovered life and wonders as far as the eye could see. The full might of Lei-Shen's empire, it trampled over the land, and to greet them was just a small group of Tolver. Hardly worth the efforts, but what Lei-Shen didn't realize was that the Tolver had a secret weapon. Don't forget that the Forge of Origination, it has the power to wipe out all life on the planet. With a bit of tinkering, with a couple of adjustments, they wouldn't have to use its full potential, it would only scour the nearby land. As Lei-Shen led the charge, gloating in his impending victory, the Tolver activated the weapon. Deep within the earth, the device rumbled to life. The earth heaved and buckled as waves of force erupted from Uldum, bathing the surrounding land in the energies of uncreation. The Tolver's defenders, and nearly every other creature on the surface of Uldum, they died that day instantly. Creatures all across Kalimdor witnessed the flash on the southern horizon, and when it subsided, Lei-Shen and his allies were no more. The release of so much power also meant that the lands of Uldum, they would forever be changed. Now, it's more like the desert that we know it as today, with just small pockets of life remaining. The surviving Tolver within Uldum, they worked to ensure that no one would ever again attempt to claim such power. They shrouded the few passages that led into the region with magic. In doing so, the Tolver effectively sealed Uldum off from the eyes of mortals, which is why we didn't explore this area until the Cataclysm, which rocked these magical defenses and revealed the land for all to see. Before the Tolveer completely shrouded Uldum in their grand illusion, a handful of Thunder King loyalists, they recovered Lei-Shen's corpse from the region. They brought it back to the Empire and enshrined it within the Tomb of Conquerors, where it would rest for millennia. The Tolveer's noble sacrifice, it had kept the Forge of Origination out of Lei-Shen's hands, and prevented any other Mogu Emperor from daring to follow in his footsteps. Lei-Shen's death had quite an impact on the Mogu Empire. The new emperors, they would rise up, but none would ever wield as much power as he had. Not to mention the deaths of many of the highest-ranking Zandalari. There were those amongst the people still alive that knew the secrets on how to resurrect Lei-Shen, but the rebuilding and recovering of this, it kept them quite occupied. They would spend generations trying to recover from the losses at Uldum. Neither would ever regain his former glory, and in time, both empires would crumble and fall.
But seasons change and tyrants die. His fury spent in times gone by. The thunder slept beneath Kunlai.
Secure the remains, brothers.
His body was recovered and enshrined within the Tomb of Conquerors, waiting for the day that the Zandalari would recover enough to come back and resurrect him. In the meantime, with the Thunder King gone and new Mogu emperors rising up, the Pandaren saw their chance to rise up as well and rebel against their slavers. They were still forbidden to touch a weapon, so instead they learned how to use their own bodies to fight. The art of the monk, it spread far and wide across the lands. The many races of Pandaria banded together and overthrew the Mogu masters. This gave way for a brand new empire, one built on the principles of justice, wisdom and benevolence. Yet the Zandalari, they had not forgotten about a promised piece of land that Lei-Shen was supposed to give them. Figuring that the Pandaren were not really likely to uphold their bargain, and knowing that they were strong enough to overthrow the Mogu, the trolls decided to invade Pandaria and take the land by force. Our Pandaren friends were in quite a panic over this. They didn't exactly hold a standing army. Luckily, one amongst them, Zhang, she had tamed a cloud serpent. Its aerial abilities, it brought them the advantage they needed to turn the tide of war. Soon enough, more followed her example. The Order of the Cloud Serpents rose up and took the sky. It forced the trolls to play their final card, their final tactic, resurrecting the Thunder King. He would surely have the power to purge the troublesome Serpent Riders, destroy any army on the ground. A pitched battle, it erupted near the Tomb of Conquerors, where Zhang was forced to sacrifice herself in a final, desperate attack, which killed the Zandalari leader. The other Zandalari soon broke ranks and fled back to their homeland in shame. Through her heroic acts, Lei-Shen's resurrection was postponed, and Pandaria entered a time of relative peace. Helped quite a bit by the Emperor Cho'Gall, who knew of the coming of the Legion. He was aware that the War of the Ancients was about to play out, and to defend his people, he became one with the land, hiding Pandaria in the mists. This act would keep them hidden from the world for millennia, and the threat of the Thunder King, it remained contained within its tomb. Fast forward to the expansion Mist of Pandaria. As with the Cataclysm, these mystical mists, they vanished around the land, and is discovered by the Alliance and the Hordes. They are bringing quite a bit of warfare to these peaceful lands, which is enough of a problem on its own. But in Pandaria it becomes extra bad. When those bits and pieces of Yasharaj fell back into the planet, it infused this piece of land with the Shah, a force that feeds on negative emotions. So our coming here, it brings about a whole bunch of problems. Problems that we need to clean up. A brand new lando, brand new resources, new people and weaponry to discover. This is great fuel for the war effort between the Alliance and the Hordes. But they're not the only ones who find out about this recently rediscovered land. The Zandalari, guided by Prophet Zul, they've come to collect what was promised so long ago. Now they need it more than ever, as the Cataclysm, it caused their beautiful Zandalar to sink into the ocean. At least, that's the story that they tried to sell back then. Zul, he kinda exaggerated the damage, considering, Zandalar is still there. But all the same, the trolls are desperate for a new piece of land, and work hard to bring back their old ally, the Thunder King. They find his body in the tomb, and bring it back to the Isle of Reckoning, where Prophet Karzul performed the ancient ritual. Despite heroes doing their very best to stop this, the ritual is finally a success. After millennia of waiting, the Thunder King, he walks the land once more.
Pandaria, her hills of gold, in dark and mournful times of old, did once a hopeless horror hold. When from her sacred veil did spring, with storm and flash, a monstrous thing, his name, Lei-Shen, the Thunder King. His thunder boomed across the land, and none who dared and fought could stand against the Iron Tyrant's hands. A palace grand, a walled domain, such mighty works born of his reign, built by slaves, their hearts in chains. But seasons change and tyrants die, his fury spent in times gone by. The thunder slept beneath Kunlai.
Secure the remains, brothers.
By Zandalari hands, he has been taken. By Zandalari voice, he has awakened. Gather, heroes. Sound the drums. The Thunder King comes. The Thunder King comes.
He gathers his new Zandalari allies, as well as the Mogul troops ever loyal to their king, and they make base within the Throne of Thunder on the Isle of Thunder. An isle most believed to be a legend. Few even knew that it was real. But there it is, where unending storms roar and split the heavens. Here it is, where we see the Alliance and Horde gather their forces to assault the Thunder King in his home. They're not exactly working with each other. Jaina Proudmoore, she's pissed off at the Horde because she lost her home to the bombing of Fedamore and the betrayal with the Divine Bell. On the other hand, we have Lorfmar Faran, who's pissed off at Jaina that purged Dalaran, murdered and imprisoned their people just because they were used by Garrosh to steal this Divine Bell. An artifact of great power, one of many that War Chief Garrosh was looking for. In the 117th year of the Thunder King's reign, the Kroon Spellweavers approached Lei-Shen with their greatest creation. A bell caused from the Maker's flesh, shaped by stars' fire, and bound by the breath of darkest shadow. This bell, when rung, it could shake the world and call to the heavens. Taken to war, the bell's cacophonous tones, it stirred the heart of Lei-Shen's warriors. It fueled their hatred and anger, lending them strength on the field of battle. The bell's screaming voice, it struck fear and doubt in the hearts of the Emperor's enemies, sending them fleeing in his path. Awed by its power, the Thunder King described the instrument as the voice of the gods, and he named it Shen King, also known as the Divine Bell. Caused from the Maker's flesh. To the Mogul, there could only be one Maker, the Keeper chained up by Lei-Shen, but we'll get to that in a moment. So the Divine Bell was sought out by the Alliance and the Horde. The Alliance got there first and decided to hide away from the Horde. In turn, the Horde used the connections in Dalaran to steal the bell for the War Chief, which led to their purge in Dalaran. It's thanks to Anduin Wrynn that the Divine Bell could not be used by Garrosh in this war. He did try to master its powers, but Anduin, he discovered the harmonic mallet, which was created by the Pandaren to counter the bell, to turn its echoes of chaos into perfect harmony. In his rage, Garrosh smashed all the bones in Anduin's body, together with the bell. He'd find other ways of empowering his forces, like finding the heart of Yashiraj, but that in a nutshell is why the Alliance and Horde are not exactly friendly with each other. While messing with the other side, they do focus on assaulting the Isle of Thunder. Step by step, they take on the forces of the Zandalari and the Thunder King, carving out a path to the Throne of Thunder, and even picking up some of the Pandaren wisdom along the way.
It ends today. Here, the cycle ends when you, Regent Lord, and you, Lady Proudmoore, turn from one another and walk away.
Jaina and Lorfmar decide to turn away from each other and focus on the threat of Garrosh instead. We still have the Thunder King to deal with though, waiting inside of his seat of power. And going straight through the door, that's going to be challenging, as Nalak guards the walls of his hidden citadel. At some point, Lei-Shen discovered a rare clutch of thundering cloud serpents, and he set to subjugating them. The largest hatchling fiercely resisted. And when Lei-Shen visited the handling pens, he laughed mightily at the charred Mogu that lined the walls. He took this hatchling for his own, and for its obedience granted its power over the storms and the sky. For thousands of years following the death of the Thunder King, Nalak has remained ever dutiful and will strike out at any that dare to approach. With our Pandaren allies, we've secured another way to get into the throne, where, even after he died, great swaths of corrupted energy lingered. Now, the resurrected Thunder King and the Zandalari trolls, they intend to harness that energy to establish the reign of Lei-Shen once again. Best to not let that happen, and the raid shows us the power this ancient old allegiance has granted Lei-Shen. First up is Jinrock the Breaker.
The Thunder King, give me power! Come, I'll show you!
When the Thunder King awoke, he rewarded the most loyal and ambitious Zandalari trolls with power beyond their wildest dreams. The Berserker Jinrock was one of the first to receive the King's blessing, and even though Lei-Shen gifts nearly tore his body apart, the troll is now capable of calling the fury of the storm in battle.
How you bit me?
His seat of power is looking a little bit tarnished. But then again, our home, it wouldn't look ready for guest either if we've been dead for millennia. Over the bridge we go, where trolls patrol the sky, and a mighty storm is trying to push us off to an unfortunate early demise. Good memories here, of raid members just unable to get across this part. Not until the ads have been killed and the storm has vanished. Next up is Horadon, who does not come alone.
Welcome, weaklings, to the rebirth of the Zandalari Empire! The Kala de Chuka Horadon, Kalamaste!
The Zandalari brought powerful creatures with them to the Isle of the Thunder King to use as engines of war. Led by the war god Jalak, the Dinomancers of the Zandalari Beast Ward use ancient tribal magics to strengthen the great beast and command obedience. The horns of Horadon, the fabled mount of Jalak himself, it can tear through the stone walls of a keep as a blade cuts through silk. And from the gates, different tribes of troll that we faced in the past, they appear. It's kinda cool to see that the unification that was started back in the Cataclysm with the badass cinematic in which Vol'jin, he walks away from the offer to join them, it also plays its part here in the next expansion. The trolls go all out trying to claim a new home, but we can't turn the dinosaur against them to seal off the gates. Until Jalak, he has no choice but join the fight as well.
The Kalakaraste, Horadon, destroy them!
Together they go down, and we go onwards towards a familiar face. Kael'thas the Spiritbinder, he makes his return. We fought him before in the Mokushan vaults, where Kael'thas was ordered by Zul to break in, discover any weapons or secrets that might be able to add to the Zandalari might. The vaults were built and expanded upon by Lei-Shen when he got into power. It contains and protects its secrets, many of the Empire's lost artifacts, and it's the resting place of the spirits of old Mogu kings. Kael'thas and his forces, they didn't get very far into the place, as we too visited the vaults. Together with Lore Walker Cho, we delved deep into Mogu history, and we uncovered that this is the location of the Engine of Nalashka. The one which held the power that Lei-Shen and his followers had used in the past to shape flesh and stone into brand new living creatures. Joe dares not to think what damage such a machine would cause to Pandaria. We had to destroy it and its protectors. Stone soldiers who've been motionless for centuries, now awakened by our entry. With the final fight against the will of the Emperor, Zinzi and Zhanzi, some of Lei-Shen's mightiest creations. But back in the Throne of Thunder, Kael'thas already told us that to him, death is merely a doorway and time is a window. He is back now, resurrecting the fallen that we slay, until we reach the Council of Elders.
Lei-Shen, let us prove to you the might of the Zandalari. We will crush these intruders where they stand. We will never fail you.
Drakari, Faraki, Amani, and the Gurubashi. Here they make their stand with the promise of an unstoppable empire. Kael'thas even empowers them during the encounter, which makes their already formidable abilities quite deadly, but not even that is enough to bring that glorious future that they envisioned to be a reality.
You have swept the filth from my doorstep. Perhaps you are worthy of my attention. But your trespass ends here. None may enter my forbidden stronghold. I shall rebuild this bridge with your bones for bricks.
Looks like Lei-Shen isn't quite ready to see us yet. The bridge is destroyed and we're sent to the underbelly of the palace, with a couple of creatures they've made themselves quite at home. Creatures like Kael'thas, for example. Over the millennia, small amounts of Mogu flesh-shaping magic, it seeped into the caverns below the Thunder King's citadel. Dark energies warped one of the chamber's native dragon turtles, melding it to the surrounding crystalline walls. Known as Kael'thas, this amalgamation of flesh and stone, it has since feasted on the cave's rich mineral deposits and grown to a colossal size. So large, in fact, that it now blocks our path forward and has to be destroyed. Its skin will spin into battle, which could cause quite a bit of trouble for the raids, but also used to kick back at Kael'thas and stop his casting. Now, I never really noticed this before, but his death animation is just shattering into little pieces. Knowing its story now, a nice little detail. Forward we go into the Forgotten Depths, where we have to ring 3 of the Mogu bells to awaken Megara. Even the most callous amongst the Mogu quiver at the thought of the dark experiments performed at the Thunder King's behest. Long ago, a young cloud serpent was twisted in a multi-headed hydra and left to languish between Lei-Shen's throne. Now the twisted creature lurks deep in the Forgotten Depths, awaiting the moment it may finally inflict its terrible agony upon others. Unfortunately for us, we're the first thing it gets to see, the first thing that gets to feel its agony, and as many heads seem endless. When one is cut down, 2 more rise up from the depths of the water, spewing fire, ice, poison, all kinds of nasty stuff. We have to keep cutting away until the beast loses its strength. Onwards to Ji-Kun's roost, and in these tunnels everything is massive and dangerous. Hanging out underneath the Thunder King is quite an effect on even the smallest of the creatures. The slugs themselves are gigantic and extremely lethal. Not surprising, as the Mogu flesh shapers discarded their failed creations in an abyssal shaft beneath Lei-Shen's keep. The reek of decay, it then lured many scavengers to the refuse pits, including the great Ji-Kun. Ruthless and cunning, the monstrous bird devoured her rivals one by one, until it was she who held sole dominion over the shadowy tunnel. Heroes had to fly out to her nest and slay her young before they became a problem. They had to defeat the master of these tunnels.
Thousands of years without new playthings. I will enjoy this.
Lei-Shen commanded his sorcerers to mold an aberration that could peer into the heart of his followers and detect any betrayal. From this decree, Dorumu was given life. The clever entity, it stubbornly obeyed its masters until the Thunder King's death, at which time it disappeared into the Citadel's labyrinth corridors. Only recently has Dorumu, all but forgotten by the Mogu, emerged from hiding. The massive ice gaze is quite painful, and the fog hides many secrets. Only by hitting the ants with the right color would they be revealed long enough to be slain. Not to mention that freaking maze that he summons that force teams to maneuver through. I remember it as being quite painful.
Welcome the Void's embrace.
We will not be forgotten. No, no, no.
Deep within the bowels of Lei-Shen's island citadel, Mogu flesh shapers formed the Saurak out of a magical substance of unknown origin. When the citadel was abandoned, some of these experiments languished in the dark pools for far too long. Poor Primordius, he is one of those. Look at the poor Saurak, all alone down here, left forgotten after countless of experiments. This did give him the ability to mutate himself, which is kinda cool I suppose. Depending on the ads that reach him, he'll mutate and obtain new powers. All the same, best to just put it out of its misery.
Stop them! The Animus must not be disturbed!
During his reign, Lei-Shen labored to build a mechanical servant that would defend his citadel without fear. When his first attempt failed, rage took hold over the Thunder King. He poured his negative emotions into the next and most successful creation, the Dark Animus. To this day, the Ornate Construct observes his duty, empowered by a mysterious substance at the heart of all Mogu flesh-shaping experiments. That's what the Dungeon Journal tells us. On the weekly quest, it gives credit to Arch-Ritualist Kael'thas to have shaped the Animus by command of the Thunder King. Either way, our next boss awaits us.
You have doomed yourselves. It is unleashed.
This anima that they used to empower the constructs, don't confuse it with the anima that we're gonna collect in the Shadowlands. This stuff is probably the blood of Raden, but we know for sure that it's vital for the flesh shaping and creating of life that Lei-Shen has done. Powerful stuff indeed. So much so that lore from honest blood elves, they took interest in it. They sent out adventurers to gather this power so they can study it and apply it to their own constructs. We have actually seen this play out in game, as the constructs that are now used by the blood elves, they're very much like the Dark Animus one. Now finally, we can get out of the underbelly, out of the sewer, and breathe some fresh air, right into the Iron Quan encounter.
Stare into the face of true power!
Legends speak of the brutality of Quan and his Quillen champions. The fearless Mogul commander was dubbed Iron Quan by the Thunder King for his unrelenting resolve to claim victory after victory for the Empire, regardless of the cost. Bit of a shame he couldn't claim victory while fighting us. After him, we enter a room where they're doing something with the images of the August Celestials. They do play a part in the Twin Consort encounter. They were actually minigames that you had to win in order to buff and help out the raid. Sadly, I'm all on my own here, so I can't really show you. Either way, the Twin Consorts, they're said to be the greatest of the Thunder King's treasures, rumored to be the only known female Mogul in existence. Lei-Shen keeps his trophies close, and their combined arsenal against interlopers even closer. The sun and the moon fight in unison, but the parts about them being the only female Mogul in existence, yeah, those really were only rumors. Still, for someone like the Thunder King, I'd imagine they'd be quite a treasure.
I can see the light.
And after making our ways through a very deadly staircase, we finally get to say hello to the man of the hour, Lei-Shen, the Thunder King.
You have earned my ire. I will make an example of you, such that all who look upon my might will tremble and submit. I am Lei-Shen, slayer of kings and gods. You have made a grave mistake.
The power of the storm, his stolen might from Raden and Aman'Ful, it's unleashed upon us. Whereas the Blood Elves, they sought out the Dark Animus to upgrade their forces. On the Alliance side, they're asked by Jaina to take her Staff of Antonidas and drain the remaining power from the Thunder King's Deus. The very powers of the Thunder King now course through the staff. I might have forgotten, but I don't recall them actually using this for the story later on. Like I said before, we have seen the Blood Elves show up with their new constructs, but I don't actually recall Jaina using the powers of the staff. Maybe some for the future, maybe I've forgotten. Either way, going over this story, it does make me realize that Lei-Shen, he could have been so much more than just a single patch boss. But still, very awesome to see how much backstory they created for him. To read about a Titan Forged that looked around himself and said, "This is not what we're supposed to be like. I'll seek out our creator, I'm going to find the answers," despite everyone believing that this is just it. And when he found Raden, lost and hopeless, he didn't follow him into despair. He decided to carve out his own destiny, thinking to act in the way that his creators would have wanted. This of course led to massive pain and suffering for the people of Pandaria, yet also an empire that rose up and held dominance over the lands.
Benevolence is a luxury for the strong, young prince. No great empire was ever built with kindness.
I'm not so sure about that. But I can tell you no great empire has ever stood the test of time by crushing its own citizens. Remember, the Mogu were overthrown. That should be the lesson of the Thunder King. It's your move, by the way.
I worry you may be too soft to wear your kingdom's crown, Prince Anduin. You would do well to learn some of your father's hardness.
Quite the character this Lei-Shen, and the Throne of Thunder, it held a little surprise for those that defeated him on heroic.
I sought only to finish the work of the gods.
Down the chamber in which we fought Primordius, there is Raden, chained up and hopeless as ever.
This twisted world is beyond redemption, beyond the reach of deluded heroes. The only answer to corruption is destruction, and that begins now.
And we do the thing that we usually do. We smack some sense into him with a whole lot of violence. He does not believe that we can succeed, but we have earned the right to try. To which he pops off into a little ball of energy and then flies away. From here on out, we would see Garrosh pick up the heart of Y'Shaarj and the world rising up against him. The Veil of Eternal Blossoms, it was hit hard by rejuvenating the hearts, but our efforts, our victory, it gave it a chance to regrow, to rebuild, something that we'll see the results of in the next patch. Eva Raden and the Mogu, they will see their story continued. Potentially maybe a new allied race, but for now, you're up to speed with the story of Lei-Shen and the history of the Mogu. A history that our Black Dragon friend Rephion, he was also really curious about during Mr. Pandaria. At one point, he even asked us to bring him the heart of Lei-Shen, which he could then devour. And keep in mind that this was before the release of Warcraft Chronicles, before we knew the fate of the Titans.
Oh, we have fallen. We must rebuild the final Titan. Do not forget.
I really wonder what kind of storyline they had in mind back then. Rebuilding the final Titan, most likely Azeroth, or maybe this is actually still a story waiting to be told.